Welcome to the Pineapple Podcast. I'm Tyler.
I'm Matt.
And I'm Josh.
Dave.
That's Dave.
Dave.
In this episode, we cover anything from... No. In this episode, we cover talking about, basic home recording setups, the importance of
Being yourself.
the importance of video, and
Social media, yeah.
and what you can do with it.
Absolutely.
So sit back, sit tight, and stand by.
We gotta work.
Cue the music.
What, those old things?
We had our drummer for a while. It was actually pretty awesome because he had his entire kit. He had a custom acrylic kit built for him. And it was gorgeous sounding. So it was completely clear. And then on the inside, he had LED lights with everything. So when he would play, as he'd play, it would flash on light. Like, it was phenomenal. Like, we could have it all triggered and set up and stuff. And then he went a step further and came to rehearsal one time with these drumsticks, custom drumsticks that were clear with LED lights in the drumsticks.
That's ridiculous.
And as he'd play, and I was like, it was phenomenal, yet it was so distracting during practices because you're like, it was just like so much fun to watch.
I would
But
love to know how much does that kit cost, because those kits generally do not sound good at all.
This one sounded, I mean, he's a stickler too for like a wicked sounding kit. So
Yeah.
he fortunately had this one built properly, and it was a phenomenal. I remember being blown away with how good this kit sounded. And it was one of those things though that, like, I mean, we all know when we're performing that it's much more than just about playing a song. Like,
It's your vibe.
and it's about the engagement and providing like that entertainment value and stuff. And there was times he didn't use it all the time as far as like lighting it up, but I mean, much like we have mood lighting here, all of a sudden, like, we'd be playing a song and he could just mood light his kit, so it wasn't distracting. It was just creating more of a mood and a feeling and a vibe. And so when we were a three-piece, so being able to have him set up in the middle of us at the back so you could see him, it just created this vibe. And I remember just being like, this is so cool. But yeah, no, Dave, it sounded amazing. A wicked sounding kit.
Speaking of your old band, we were creeping some of your old videos. You had some hair. Wow.
Dude, I did every kind of hairstyle. Ever since I was in high school, though. Every kind of hair. We used to start off September shaving our heads and seeing who could win with growth, and I won every time.
That's funny.
To this day, it's weird. I shave, and in the morning, and by night, it's grown back. It's disgusting.
Not me. I decided to get rid of it all. I
Yeah?
was like, you know what? I just want to glide through the water,
It was an
More
aerodynamic
aerodynamic.
choice. I
He
think.
did it before he knew what he was doing. He's like, I'm going to actually take on a swimming career.
Yeah, it's...
And then he did it, and then he's like, I don't even like
Or
water.
like race car racing,
Yeah.
and you can like go
I
and
don't
like your head
even
is
like the
exposed. You're
water.
like, all those guys
Yeah.
with long hair.
He doesn't like water.
Yeah.
Race car drive. He's like, man, I don't want to win these race car, what do you call it, races.
Races.
What do you call those race
What do you
car
call
events?
those things? Race cars.
I don't want to.
Oh,
I don't want to win the race car races and then take my helmet off and have helmet head. That's embarrassing. So he just shaves it.
I used to be a swimmer.
Yeah.
I actually
I used
remember
to be a swimmer.
when I first shaved my head, though, for the first time. I remember like taking my shirt off and being like, oh no, it just stays the same. It's just so much easier, you don't have to worry about
Yeah, that's
redoing
true.
it and messing around
When
with
my
it.
son Jaden was just a baby, Tyler came over one time, and he just was like laughing and rubbing his head like you're so confused.
yeah.
Like, what?
It's like, wow, it's like a shark's back. No, I said that, but
Yeah, he didn't say that.
I do know
He
that,
didn't know what a
like,
shark
no, I
back
did.
felt
I remember also. I mean, we talked about this I think in the first podcast, was just getting to know who you are as an individual, and so trying to figure out who you are in the band. Like, how you've got, like, I remember one of the things, like, when we first started, we had somebody kind of speak into us and say, listen, if I can encourage you guys in anything, is keep your relationships outside of the band. That your relationships don't just become with your bandmates or your look-alike, sound-alike. Everything's going to be the same. And I noticed it with bands that I looked up to, that, like, even local bands or bands that we went on tour with or whoever it may be, that there were times I was like, oh yeah, they all look the same. They all wear the same clothes, same tattoos, same girlfriends, drink the same drinks. Like, so I wanted so desperately to not be like them, but I did have this level of trying to figure out who I was. I mean, your prefrontal cortex not even developed. So I'm trying to figure out who I am. Early 20s.
Easy
I'm
influence. Someone
I'm
says,
with
hey,
these
do
guys.
this.
Yeah, and these guys, I'm like, oh, I look at the guys in the band who, and like I'd share, like, these are guys too that I wasn't best friends with. These are guys that auditioned to be in the band, and we were getting to know each other as we went. So I would pick things up like, oh, wow, that's really cool. So I started trying to, it influenced me, but the thing was, it wasn't actually who I was. It's not what I wanted to wear. So I look back at some of the images and I'm like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking? But I'd always had, growing up, shaved head, half my hair shaved, longer hair, stuff cut into it, stuff through my eyebrow, front shaved with down through my eyebrow, long hair, tied it all back. And then I remember coming back from, where was it, England? Or I can't remember where it was coming back from. And just everybody out there had the man bun. And I remember, you're talking about easy hair, long hair, tossing it back is the easiest thing. And I loved it. You just toss it back, you're all good to go. You're like, done, man. And if you want a second hairdo, take it down. If you want a third, do one up. Like,
Loving it. As soon as they said
it.
that the barbershops are closed, I loved going to my local little barbershop right there in Cloverdale, Harry and Sons.
Yeah, I go there too, man.
Yeah, awesome people, awesome place. But
Harry and Sons, official sponsor of Pineapple Podcast.
it's hair trims and
Harry
beard
and Sons.
trims. Harry and Sons.
Get cut.
Not their motto. We're going to cut that. It's going to get cut. But they're awesome people, family-run business. The guy, Troy, who runs it, like his family and like their history, like I think his grandfather was Harry, and they had a place they were like associated with the dry cleaners way down the road there. Like they're an old school Cloverdale family-run place.
Yeah.
And it used to be like, oh, have a coffee, have a beer, hang out. Jaden could sit in the little waiting chair, and it was like a big social experience. And then, obviously COVID hit, and they all shut down, and I was like, challenge accepted. I won't cut my hair. And then grew out of the mohawk, let the beard go, and now I've got this extra large beard mask, and my beard is still like longer than the beard mask. I'm like, oh, I'm due for a trim.
It is crazy, but I remember, I look at the stuff back, I look at the photos now, and I'm like, what was I thinking? Like, I tried dreads, because the guy in the band had dreads, but my hair was too straight. It took like
Wouldn't mat
6
properly.
hours of matting, and I was like, oh, this is going to be so much fun. And the amount of work, and I'm also not into that. And then I realized when I switched from long hair, which was so easy to, but there was a transitional period, okay? So it was like long hair, which I loved, and I would just tie it back if I didn't want it long. Then shaved a little bit, then shaved more, then shaved on this side, and then back, and then I went, and then eventually it was just like, forget it, cut it all, and then it got cut off, and now that it's even shorter, I mean, it's still, I consider this really short, to be honest, but it's annoying that now I have to cut it like every week. So I got my daughter actually the other day, I was like, gave her the shavers, I'm like, just go to town on the back, and she actually did a really good job.
Thankfully.
That's funny.
I literally
it's hair, man.
I have no options with my hair. It has to be short. It
Yeah?
just goes out. Like it has a thickness of growing a fro, but it just grows straight out in every direction like a bear's fur.
Now I
Like,
kind of want you to do it.
Yeah,
oh,
same
it's-
here.
It looks awful.
Same
and,
here.
And it's sweaty.
We think you look
gross.
amazing, and you should grow it out.
I think so
Well,
too.
Yeah. Okay, so what
Thank
about
you.
you? Did in any of the bands, did you ever see somebody in your band and be like, oh, that's wicked, I want to kind of copy that?
Well, my hair never grew that great ever. Like when mushroom cuts were cool, my hair grew this way, but then this side
That's
had
the advertising for
cowlicks.
Harry and Sons right there. If your hair never grew
It grew good ever.
good ever,
Come see us at Harry and
Yeah.
Sons.
we'll
get you
we have
cut.
a place for you.
Because they could just like
They'll get you cut.
go from like your neck just over your whole head, right? They just like
No, I had
shaving
a
cream the whole thing.
It
And
would,
just,
it would be like the mushroom cut on the one side, but then like cowlicks up this side, so then they'd continue that way. So it was like shoop, swoop. And then remember I got my hair when we were in the rock band. It was like this stylist was like, "Hey, I'm gonna make your hair dark, and then I'm gonna put like a little hint of like red in it," which was cool at the time. And but I was a roofer at that time, so I was out in the sun all day, and my hair turned maroon. It was real bad. It's like
I
fluffy
remember-
maroon.
She's like, I'm gonna dye it this color and put a hint of oregano in
Just
it.
a hint.
What?
Yeah.
everyone who did
Oregano, the
roofing,
smell, right?
who had like the orientation, I remember hearing like that's one job I would never do. Like me as a trades guy already is a bad idea, but roofing is like they're like if you're gonna be a roofer, you're gonna fall off the roof at one point in time.
Yeah.
Like it's just it's a certainty. It's gonna happen to you. You're gonna fall off the roof. And I was like,
Yeah.
no thanks.
It makes
Like,
you strong, and I was afraid of heights. So it
Did
was
you do
kinda-
roofing?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
I
he
know
did
that.
like hardcore roofing for
Yeah.
quite a bit
What?
like, when he was in
Yeah.
the band.
That's why you're so buff.
Oh, you know this thing. No, I was afraid of like heights for a while, so it was kind of a nice like I used to do customer service and bartending and serving, and then I was like, I want to learn. I was useless with my hands, so I was like, I want to learn tools, kind of like my dad. He's a general contractor, so it's like that classic like, oh, I'll learn something like my dad does. So I was like, okay, I'll learn some tools, and then my buddy was a roofer, so he was doing his own company, so I went in with him, and yeah, it was a lot of hard work and scary mornings where I was looking at the roof like, oh, I don't want to go up there. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it.
Did
And
you
then-
ever fall off?
Nope.
Really?
Because he didn't do it long enough.
Yeah,
He
I,
switched up.
I think I did it under a year. So, but my least favorite was putting plywood up on the roof. So it'd be like you'd be by yourself, and you got the ladder up against the roof, and then you put the whole 4x8 sheet on the ladder, and then you're just like walking up the ladder, pushing it up, and then you got a nail at the top, so you can kind of push it up and then make it land on the roof, and then the nail will kind of catch it, and then you just start stacking on top. So you're like down. I guess I was the grunt really. So I just kept bringing the shingles too, like 70-pound bundles, carrying those up.
Yeah.
Because the second craziest job was when we were recording the metal album, and you actually worked with our producer installing heating
And sheet metal. Yeah, that was
inside
hard
a house.
too.
So like he's working Tyler's butt off in the vocal booth, and actually during the daytime he was your legit contractor boss, pushing you super hard. Because one thing he taught us was like the work ethic, and getting good takes and good albums is challenging each other to get to that next level of like if you're bringing out an emotion or for whatever instrument you were playing at the time, like it couldn't just be good, it had to be great.
Yeah, he was a great mentor. It was like he definitely was. He pushed me like in the. I'd say
Not
he
like
pushed me
whiplash
harder.
pushing, but that taste of it.
He pushed me harder in the job than in the studio. Like maybe because I enjoyed it, so I didn't feel the same. Whereas with the heating and sheet metal, I didn't really like it. So he'd be like, "Hey, go put that bathroom fan up," and then like 10 minutes later, he'd be like, "What's taking so long?" I'm like, "I just fucking learned this."
Matt and Josh, did either of you ever work in any kind of construction field?
Oh, never. No.
Nope.
That's not my field.
Nope.
I when I moved home from England, was given an opportunity to work. Like, I was an artist, so everything was about. Like, I remember coming home from England, sitting in our yard at my in-laws' place, and just being like, I remember talking to my wife and just being like, man, like wanting to pursue what we loved. And so she was a phenomenal photographer, and I worked for her for years. And then that's when she was like, let's start a band. Like why don't you start a band and do that full time, like as a career? And so obviously I had to make money somehow. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll also then work and do this. And so I got the opportunity to work in construction. And I've always loved construction. Like that was one thing that like throughout like high school, everything. Like I always loved tinkering with my hands and building things. Most of the time that we built skate ramps. That was the big thing. And I was also the procrastinator that would just goof around in class with my friends skateboarding. And then when it was time to do it's like, hey, by the way, it's the end of the semester. You've got to hand something in. It was like, oh, shit. And I would quickly just throw something together right then and there and get my passing grade and like move on. So I didn't mind tinkering with stuff, but I grew up with my dad did not like tools. We had not a tool in the house. If I had to fix anything, it was always I had to go to a friend's house to get a tool. So when I started in construction, I was like, yeah, I'll give it a go. And it was on a roof. Like my first job was working on the Sumas Flats at a hotel that was being renovated. It's like a 3-story hotel, crazy ass windy in the winter. And I remember the first thing he says, like, okay, so carry, when you started sharing that story, I was like, oh my goodness. So he's like carrying the 4x8 sheets because I was the grunt guy. So like carrying it up, and just so you know, like it's going to be crazy windy. If the wind picks up and takes you off the roof, ride the 4x8 sheet down. And I was like,
Nope.
okay, wait. Ride the 4x8 sheet. And I don't know, like to this day, I don't know if they were just like joshing with me, like dicking around with me, or if they were being serious. But I remember actually at times being like, holy shit, like this is like really scary. And then I got to a place where like, I mean, I was writing lyrics on 4x8 sheets of wood. Like I was like completely like not the right person for this job because my mind was never, I enjoyed like making skate ramps and stuff and skim boards and skateboards and all that kind of stuff, but not being in the actual profession of.
I think the closest thing I would have come to like a manual labor job was right when the pandemic started. The restaurants were closed, weddings were off. I had no work. My little brother worked at a grocery store, and I did grocery store midnight packing the shelves during the pandemic. And it was really crazy to like get there at like 10 at night, work till 6 in the morning, and you're pulling out these like 50-pound bags of rice, and you're stocking the shelves, like, and you're filling up everything, and then the next day it was all gone.
That's
like,
wild.
what do you mean I have to pull out a whole other flight? There's pallets and flats, and the trucks coming in, they're like, we got a truck on the wrong day, and there's like trucks and shit that's like, normally you'd stack it once, and then in a week, maybe you'd, top it up. How many times a week do you think people normally buy 50-pound bags of rice? Never. Pandemic shopping, it was just like... Everything, all the toilet paper, the paper towel. So that was easy to put away.
Do you think with the toilet paper, this is something my wife and I talked about so much because it was like this big thing to like people to like really hoard toilet paper, and I was thinking like, if I wasn't sure if people were shitting more, or if they were just like, was it Were they
there's-
nervous and shitting more?
They were scared shitless.
Yeah, I was wondering because it was funny because I remember hearing
scared
people being
shit
like,
more.
we get a
Shitful.
text and it's like, hey, we're at Costco, want toilet paper from like random people.
Yeah,
And I was like,
I got a line on some TP.
I
It's like
think-
4-ply.
we never talked to like this ever in the past about our shitting experiences, but I think I'm all right.
Well, did you ever get this like before shows? Like if I'm got a show coming up,
Oh,
and
you were
if
the
I
worst.
feel nervous, like especially if I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Like if I got a show coming up and I'm like there's a 2 days away and I'm like practicing the piano, I'm like, I don't have this. I instantly get my stomach turns and I feel like I'm gonna
Oh.
make brown, they say.
Oh.
I don't
No,
think
I didn't.
anyone
I
says
honestly, I
that.
never got that. No.
No, yeah.
It was like the day of the shows. We were like, we're ready to go on stage. Like, where's Tyler?
I gotta
Like, it was
pee
in the
all the
back
time.
room.
Yeah,
Like,
and I
he's
gotta
like,
pee
He's
all
like,
the
guys, if
time.
you could just mic me up, I'm just gonna stay in the
Yeah.
bathroom.
Yeah. Just throw me a mic, give me a long cable.
did you all tell the story of when we were playing in that stadium, and you had the mics on, and Colin had to go to the bathroom?
No. We played a battle of the bands just out of high
BC
school.
plays.
Yeah.
Oh, rad.
It was during a Ravens lacrosse game.
GM place, technically.
It wasn't it BC? It was BC. I don't know, one of the two.
Whatever,
Let's
Ravens
just say
played there.
it's BC place.
It was in a place.
60,
We're like
60,000
60,000
60,000
There's
seats.
4 bands
It's
in
full.
each corner of the rafters. There's probably
The
3,000.
crowd was cheering. The crowd was going wild.
Yeah.
No, there was a 7,000 people there, which was cool for us. But then all the bands set up on the outer ring, and that was cool. But the story is,
We would convoy down with walkie-talkies because cell phones weren't the biggest thing at that time.
They paid you?
We won extra studio time.
Oh,
at
wait.
Mushroom
We won a
Studios.
No,
Studios.
I meant page.
oh, yeah.
They
Yeah,
paid
no
you.
pages, just
Yeah.
walkie-talkies because we were old school and we'd be in the car on the convoys and like, hey,
Yeah.
what are you guys doing, McDonald's or like whatever?
Oh, I love it.
We're turning left here, like, because it was, that was the only time we went to Vancouver was to play shows,
Oh, I love
right?
it.
And so we caravanned it. And then, so the cool thing about playing the stadium show was we got to kind of free roam. And Fody, our guitar player, he had his walkie-talkie on his belt clip and he just carried it around. And I saw he went into the bathroom with a bunch of people. And then so I waited till he got in there and gave him enough time to get to the urinal. And I just went on the walkie-talkie and I was like, I want to hear you pee, Fody. Let me hear you pee. And so everyone's looking at him like, who is this guy? Like,
Don't worry, it's my best friend.
it's just my best friend. Yeah, he just,
Just my best friend. We joke like this all
he's
the time.
kidding. He doesn't actually want to hear me pee.
Yeah.
Even though
That's
there's
hilarious.
15 random strangers in a stadium watching a lacrosse game.
He wants to hear all of you pee.
So when you like, you guys, you mentioned that like, did you ever go into Vancouver? Because obviously, like, you guys, the band was where? Like, it was originated like out here in Langley.
Langley, yeah,
Langley.
Langley,
Okay.
Cloverdale, Langley, all the
Cloverdale,
time.
Langley. Okay, so
Yeah.
was it something like pre-playing shows? Did you guys go into Vancouver much?
Almost never.
Chinatown for school and
We did
about
improv
it.
comedies. We went to
Improv,
the
we
Yale,
did
to
that.
the Roundhouse
that
Theater in
once.
Yaletown.
Okay.
But at that age, when we were just getting started in the band, like Vancouver was just like almost this mythical. Like you didn't know where to park. We never had the right like. The biggest thing we ever did was Warped Tour, and it was
Okay.
that funny thing of like we're pulling up in our parents' minivans.
Like,
and-
did you play Warped Tour?
Yeah,
Or,
we
we did
oh,
one
well
show.
done.
One show on the world.
Well done.
Yeah, in Vancouver. But it was like me and TJ at the time. I had my mohawk, my leather vest. We didn't have our passes, and we're just like, let's just be super confident and walk in like we're supposed to, because we couldn't figure out where to go. Everyone had tour buses and passes and things and that, and we knew we had to set up and play and all this like pressure going on. And it was just like a fake it till you make it moment. We just walked in like we were supposed to be there, and then we had to find the person. Like, hey, we need to. Where do we park our parents' van? Like, we gotta unload our stuff. Like, and
My
they're
mom is here, and she's wondering
mom-
how long she's gonna have to read.
like, yeah, exactly. We actually rented a megaphone so we could like announce to people, "Come see Cetra play," and like it was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. I got real burnt. I remember, real burnt, and then I had to go. I went home because I was like, oh, I got like too badly burnt, and then it turned out our bands were good for backstage, and I could have gone and met Coheed Cambria, and then all the guys later were like, oh yeah, we're backstage, and I was like, no.
It's funny the pressure that we put on ourselves though, because I remember that too. That it's like, oh, this is like we gotta like everything was pressure. Like I know that feeling. Like we would show up, it's like, okay, we gotta meet. It's like, well, wait a minute. Like there was none of that. It was just we put it on ourselves. There was so much pressure put on because ultimately when we got on stage, we just like I'd see some bands like, oh, you guys rehearse a lot. They're like, no, never. We just work it out on stage. I'm like, what? Like we're rehearsing 5 nights a week
Yeah,
for
we
5 hours.
rehearsed so hard for
we
this
were,
one
and they're
show.
just like, oh, we could care less. But I'm like, I kind of want a bit more of that in there. Like, obviously, I've learned like balance is like key and stuff. But I was gonna say like one of the things that I feel like for me, which was fortunate, was that like I went down to Vancouver all the time skateboarding with buddies. So we were always skateboarding. We were always looking for places to kind of sneak into and find new places to skate. But the eye-opening thing for me when I first started playing shows was the difference between a club in the dark and a club in the day.
Yep. Oh.
And I remember being like, oh man, this club's so cool. Like the first club that I went to, that was like, you know, the first show, you're like, this is so rad, this is so important. And then as you're like, as you know, your career grows, and all of a sudden you're there like earlier for a sound check or whatever it may be, and the lights are on, you're like, oh dear God, turn the lights off. Like it is this, and it's funny because I always used to say like, does cleanliness just go out the window when it comes to like owning a club? Like, do they just be like, listen, we don't have to clean anything, just turn the lights off, and no one's gonna ever know. But what about you guys? Like, what was it like that first? Where was the first club you remember playing?
Well, probably because we repeatedly played it, was the Media Club.
Oh, I remember the Media
The
Club.
backstage
I love
place.
the
I believe it's a Brown Social House now,
That's
sadly.
underneath the
Queenie Theater.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the back corner.
Yep.
And there was a sound guy who
Trouble.
told us to call him Trouble.
Yes.
And he was
He's
the
awesome.
greatest, nicest sound guy. He knew that room well. We learned to never drink the draft beer there. You just get hard, or from the bottle, because it made you feel real sick. There was little parties in the back rooms. It was an
remember
easy
that.
place. It was right by Stadium SkyTrain Station.
Yep.
We could pack it. You could have a bunch of bands in the same night.
Yeah.
And
I had the luckiest, like, almost accident in that underground parking lot. I was, like, backing up.
I remember this.
Full car of gear, and, like, I was always one of the drivers with my mom's minivan full of stuff. And I'm just backing up, and then I nailed something.
Oh.
And it was the security guard's car. But luckily, I don't know how, but do you know how like the license plate plastic holder is about an inch thick and sticks out in front of the bumper? I hit just that. I like nailed it. I cleaned it right off. And the guy was like, "What's going on?" And then
You're like, what
helped-
did you do?
helped him put it back up. I'm like, "Why'd you park there? You came out of nowhere." No, but he was actually super nice, and like it popped back on, and so he didn't
Oh, that's cool.
Sue you.
do anything. And I was like, "Wow, okay, I can play
That
the
really
show."
killed the buzz. That was a buzzkill
Killed
for
the
the
vibe.
show.
I don't remember.
We
like,
learned about homeless people watching your car for $5, and you give
Oh.
them a bit of money, and they're like, "No one's gonna mess with your car, man." And we gave him like $5, and he was like, "Oh, thank you so much." And we're like, "Oh, it was on Hastings. I think we were playing. It was I
Do you-
don't remember the name of the show. It became a country bar later, but it was for.
This
It's
is
down the
kinda-
street from the Canby. The
this is-
Bourbon.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
think
played
so.
there. And
Cordova.
Then, yeah, and it was like right in the middle of that sketchy part of town where you do want to pay a homeless guy to watch your car for a couple minutes.
did he watch it or he used to
He-
walk
He
away?
did. He watched it.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember when you
Wow.
go to the Peony or Playland, everyone like renting out their
driveways.
Oh,
yeah.
and stuff like that? You remember
Yeah.
what I used to do?
Tyler was a gem.
I'd be like, "Oh, here?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, here." And so I'd be like, I'd like pull like a little bit, and I'd be like, "There?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, here." And I'd be like, little tiny bit, like there, and they'd be like, "No, here." And I'd be like, "Back up." I'd be like, "There." And they're like, "No."
Their house would be like 5 blocks
Here.
off the road. Like, come over this way, and Tyler would just like go pulling into the next driveway, and like, no,
No, not that driveway. I'd just like,
driveway.
I'd be like so dense. I'd be as dense as I could. And then at one point, one person was like, "Come and pull into my garage," and I was like, "We're not parking in your garage."
You come on in and have a cup of tea with me. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I was kind of going down that road because it got me thinking of like, it's interesting now, like where I look at things like I've enjoyed watching artists go live on Instagram, or they go live on TikTok, or they go live on Facebook, or there's all these things, and I look at some of the like shit shows that have like shows that we played, and we worked so hard because we didn't do terribly many like local. I never really enjoyed. I loved playing. Don't get me wrong. Like it did. There was times when. I mean, like I mentioned, it like killed me. Like it wasn't what really charged my batteries being on stage, but I did enjoy playing the music that we were creating, and I never really felt like I got to scratch the surface of being able to even really share like a lot of the stuff that I had written. Meaning like where I was with guys that I was like, listen, like if we want this to be a kick-ass engaging show, all the songs have to be really pumped up. The crowd's got to get this, because like at the time too, like we were a part of like winning, like we won Seeds, and then we were part of like the Peak Performance Project, and like everything was like all about like listening to people that, again, who are you listening to in your life? But we were listening to the wrong people. And in my mind, it kept being like, man, I love all these bands. And all these bands at the time, it was like Radiohead. And like, I even loved Coldplay at the time. And like listed off all these bands that had all these really melancholish, intimate, quiet songs. And I remember it was always like, oh no, it's got to be like pumped. We've got to keep the crowds pumped. And everybody that we were part of winning these competitions were always like, you got to keep the crowds pumped. Like it was always about pumped. I was like, can we not breathe? Like, can't we have these times? And so when I think of all the shows of like just really fighting to have people at the shows, and I hated begging people. I hated begging people to come. That's why I didn't like ever playing local, because it's like all these people that say they're your supporters and stuff. And I didn't count family and friends because they love anything you do. But I didn't like begging. Just like I wanted people just to like us for who we were. And instead of focusing on that, I look at it now and I'm like, man, like I think that it's so cool, which is why I'm excited to have some of the artists and some of just the people on the show with us, is like to talk about them and to see the success that they're having with just doing their own solo stuff or whatever it may be on Instagram Live and having much more of an engaged community than slugging it out. And like the person that got paid was
we never
not
got the good
bands.
time slot. The original artists, we get to play it like, hey, it's Friday night. You get to play at 8 or 9, and we're like, none of our friends can get there until 10 or 11. We know we could pack the place at 11, but you want to play your top 40 cover bands, which no offense to them, that's an awesome gig.
Yeah,
I would love that gig. That's an amazing job to have. But those original artists didn't have the thing. Whereas now it's like they're all at home. They've been home for a year. You don't get to have an audience live to go play with right now.
See, but for me, I felt most comfortable in my home. So like being in my home and playing, even like this morning I was playing with my girls and it was absolutely unbelievable. Like I love those moments. And
do you
that's
have
why
like a home recording setup?
I do, yeah.
What do you have set up?
Right now I have set up I stripped everything back because I do so much video editing now. So everything's stripped back. So I took everything out. Most of the stuff's in storage, but I always have something set up. So I think I set up my Scarlett i6, whatever that may be. And then there's always mic set up right away. And then obviously like I can plug in directly, or I have like, I never bring the Voxes and all that stuff in because it's just too loud. But I've got all my guitars lined up around me and stuff like that. So when inspiration strikes, which is hard because as I'm working for clients and I'm editing, like music is such a huge part of setting. It's always been something to me. Like there's always been like when I'm living life, I feel like there's always a soundtrack that's going on in my heart. So when I'm doing something for a client, I'm always invested in making sure that the story that I'm telling of theirs is matched with the appropriate emotional story in music. So I take it very, very seriously. So I have a great studio setup when it comes to like speakers, sub, all that. Like, so it's always awesome.
And you built it over time.
I did.
Obviously.
Yep.
Do you find yourself though, like, I always used to think like being a musician, like, oh, we can just make our own music for these videos, right? That's so easy. But like I find the time it takes to do that, it's just easier, and there's great stuff on those sites like what is it, Artisio? Or
I use Artlist,
a
lot, and there's also like Epidemics, and there's so many of them, and each one has its pros and cons. But that's actually something that for us as well, that and any artist out there, is that there's so many avenues now. So like I'll get back to that. Remind me to get back to that, like about like Artlist and all that stuff. But going back to what I was saying before about playing shows and just the amount of effort that we put in to try to beg people to come. And then I remember getting in arguments because we always went into it with like, okay, here's the deal. Like we'll play this show, and the guys would always say, listen, like we want you to be the headliner. So 8 o'clock is just as shitty as 1 a.m.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay? So
you want that 11 o'clock spot.
Exactly.
That's the headliner
That's the
spot.
headliner spot. So we always said we want we want you to headline. So we'd always be the headliner at 11, and then there was always a couple bands after us because we hated everyone's like either wasted, and I didn't want to play for wasted people, or they're done and they want out of there. And then also too, at the end of the night, like I watched as bands were promised money, and then they would be begging like the guy that was like just some Joe Blow, that was the promoter that was going to make this show amazing, do jack shit, except for he had a connection at the club. And so then this artist, us, was like working our ass to get all these people off. We made all the money, and then you're begging at the end of the night. They're like, well, we didn't make as much as we thought. And we're like, well, I know how many people we brought in.
Yeah,
right?
The night wouldn't happen without you, but why was it always that huge struggle and no one ever keep their word?
And I was the quiet guy that was like, didn't want to go. So I was like, can somebody else go deal with the money thing, man? Because like we'd worked out a guarantee. So now going back to like seeing all these people especially over the last year during the pandemic, of seeing these artists being themselves.
Cut out the middleman.
Number one, the fucking very best thing they could ever be is they get to be themselves in their living room where they're most comfortable, and you get the pure, raw emotion, and you get it all. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is so good. And I often think, I'm like, oh, like this is it. Like this, there's an avenue. Obviously, I'm not saying it's gonna, like, there's never, like, live music. There's always an avenue for live music, but there's also this, and there's something that's unique and something that's so special about it. And I think now I'm like, well, what if we had a combination like when I was touring, and it was like not worrying so much about like the stress of like 3 months, because we always had a rule in the band that we always wanted to play, like if we played locally here, we wouldn't touch that till like past 3 months later.
There was all those like magic numbers of like, don't go back until this much time.
We wouldn't touch it. And it was like, and then there was always the times too, like, I mean, we can all talk about like, Okay, so here's like brutally honest. The shittiest show you've ever played, least amount of people, garbage show.
Oh,
A lot of them.
the UBC one for my brother when we went
UBC,
there. We
that was
couldn't
the
find
worst
the
shot
building.
ever.
This is
Oh,
just-
what was that place called?
No, it wasn't a place. We like played at the bottom of a dorm.
That's even better.
We weren't even a venue. This was like a room in a place. We couldn't find it. It was raining. It
pouring
was
rain.
shitty.
Worst
and
drive ever.
The one song we were playing, somehow the guitar was out of tune,
No.
or you were out of key.
It was a new song.
It was a new hairstyle. Don't get mad at him.
It was a new hairstyle. I was confused.
He had a perm.
I had just gone
weird.
swimming.
It was humid.
I thought he didn't like swimming.
Sorry, he raced a race.
Yeah, he was
raced.
racing races all around the building. One time, me and Tyler actually got made fun of. We were doing like cardio outside the Central City Brewing Pub, and I went to the Rock Club show T-shirt place on Granville.
Oh yeah.
I forget the name of it. Rock something.
Rock Shop.
And all the shows were black or white, so I bought the turquoise Zwan shirt.
Dolly Swan.
Wait.
Like the Billy Corgan band Zwan.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, they were.
I forgot about them.
Oh, they were fantastic.
There,
So- but
Smashing Pumpkins.
had like a
Anyway.
smashed
Smashing
rainbow on
Pumpkins. Oh,
the
I
thing,
love Smashing
and this
Pumpkins.
guy, like total '90s thing, was like he called me gay or something. While we were going by, we were just jogging, getting our cardio for the show. Like made fun of me and Tyler for jogging, so that was a pretty bad experience there. I wasn't a fan of being heckled before we even started.
Yeah.
But
Get
the
over here and
UBC
get
show,
in.
just Tyler was out of tune. We had no sound guy. We were too loud. We were too
It
young.
was a new song, and that's where we learned our lesson. Don't start a set with a new song that you've never played before. But it was like
It seems like a cool thing.
it
Let's
was like a
debut
weird
this
chord.
new song.
And
Everyone's gonna
I
love
started
this.
in the wrong key. Like I was just like I was probably me, like totally just being like, and then I could hear it happening, and I was like,
Committed to it.
and it was all glass.
Oh, did you commit and then stop?
No, we kept going.
We gave
just
you the
kept
whole
going.
song, and it was off the whole time.
And it was the glass ceiling. It was like glass walls, short ceiling. It was just not good, and it was terrible finding the place. Pouring rain, caravanning, walkie-talkies.
bringing all our stuff
I
up.
love the walkie-talkies. Because
always-
it always goes back to the walkie-talkies. There I was playing, and they on the
Breaker,
walkie.
breaker.
They're like, Tyler, you started the song wrong. It's like, oh,
I can't
turn
find
that
this
off.
damn place. It's too much rain.
Dude, we had like, it reminds me, it's funny because like as a dad now of two girls, like they love walkie-talkies as well. Because like when I grew up as a kid, like my dad was a land surveyor, and part of his work was they had walkie-talkies to talk back and forth. Well, as a kid, when I would go to work with him, which was phenomenal because he was always in different locations outside in the forest, and he'd start working and be like, all right, you just go play in the forest, come back later. And I loved it. I'd just go explore. But they'd have walkie-talkies. And so anytime we would do anything as a family, which was rare, but we'd go on like camping. My dad would like bring the walkie-talkies or something, and he'd always be like, okay, this is like, we'd use the walkie-talkie. So I love you talking about this because like now with my girls, and we've gone on a couple like caravans with like, my in-laws or something. My father-in-law's like, I got the walkie-talkies, and the girls are so into it. And they're like, and it's always like, Papa, did you see the bird that just flew by? Like, and it's the cute. I love it. So I love you guys using walkie-talkies because to me
hilarious.
it's like,
It's one of
Yeah.
my favorite names for
It's-
an invention ever.
It's great too when you're
I can
like
walk.
for kids.
And
and I can talk.
And I can talk. It's
a
a
walkie-talkie.
walkie-talkie.
Yeah.
We were playing with it with my
Trademark.
nephew. We were doing but whenever we were using, we were just doing like the Emperor from Star Wars. Be like, you must submit to the dark side of the Force. Or like, yeah, and be like, dark side of the Force. It's just
I love it. I think it's awesome. All right, I got to take a massive piss and then we're going to keep going.
break time.
Brought to you by.
Yeah, brought. I was like, why didn't I just go pee? Like,
Before we started.
but the conversation was good, so I was like, oh, I'm just gonna let it just go.
So Tyler, you had a little bit of an outing today. I would like to hear some more about that.
You went on a field trip.
I went on a field trip to the Vibe Cave Studios.
Did you take your mom's minivan
No,
or
I didn't.
walkie-talkies.
No walkie
To himself? Tyler,
No
are you there,
minivan.
Tyler? I am here, Tyler.
You can come in
Big
now.
rig coming
Yeah.
in. Big rig.
You know, I went to Vancouver to Braden Regno's studio, the Vibe Cave Studios.
Awesome.
And kind of filmed his setup there and went over some of his stuff and what he does. And actually, one of the unofficial sponsors of this podcast, the Vibophone. He's actually working on these. It's a microphone that instead of using an effect, pass that around, instead of using like a VST effect to make like, the radio sound and
Yeah.
the phone sound,
Yeah.
it's legit. And it's got two XLRs, one's for condenser, one's for dynamic. I'm still learning it. I just got it today, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering it, Braden.
That is so cool. So for all the young viewers and listeners out there, this is actually a phone.
Yeah.
Back in
They
the
used
day,
to look
back
like
in the
this.
day, they used to look like this, and this was actually the you would listen here, and speak there.
And the
Is that-
cable was really long, so if you wanted to have a
is
private conversation,
wild.
you had to hope you had a long enough cable
Yeah.
to go around out of the kitchen into the family room and talk around the corner to somebody.
Yeah.
And everyone knew you were on the phone with someone, and they didn't want everyone to hear what you're talking about, but it was on a wire. So you're telling me that this has that like the radio
The
effect.
radio, old time radio.
Is
So-
that from like a rotary phone?
I actually don't
This
know.
has
It
gotta
looks
be
like
from
it.
a
It's
rotary.
Gotta
looks
be from
like
a
it.
rotary
It's
phone.
classic.
So does it have like with both of these here? Is this one because this one was what you listened through? Is he using both of these go through here?
I actually think one goes to each one.
Oh,
as a
okay,
mic,
so you
and
can
I
s-
could be wrong,
you can
but
sing
I
in
think
each one?
that's what it is.
Does he hook up like? Does he play his saxophone and other instruments using that as
You
well?
can do anything with it. It's like I'm going to use it for in that Tool cover band to do some of his effects because he's got a lot of great radio effects
What
on
about
there.
what about also recording? I mean, this would be fantastic to have as like putting up to a speaker or something if you want to give some sort of like odd effect.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like mic
Yeah.
and
Intro,
speaker with it.
outros,
Like
exactly.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
Can't wait
would
to
be that
mic
would
the
be
guitar.
great as a second microphone. So you put up your clean mic and
Yeah.
you put up
have
that
the
one,
dirty and
then
mix
run
it
it
in
Yeah.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said it's great for guitar, so I'm looking forward to playing with that. We'll
Wow,
make a
I'm
video.
excited to hear what
So
it sounds
he
like.
he made this
Yeah, he made
himself?
that. Yeah, he
Check it out.
made that.
Wow.
That's very cool. What made him? Did he tell how he came up with
The
the idea to do it?
vibraphone.
You know, we're gonna get him on here, and we'll get him to tell us
Yeah,
that.
he'll be one
That's
of our
for sure.
I'm-
upcoming guests.
I'm super curious to hear how the condenser works
Same here.
on there because
It's hot. He
It's
said.
obviously the condenser is not
it's for
going to be
you.
what's
For me.
stock in there.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
That's wild.
You gotta gap that one.
Buy, sell, buy, sell.
Business.
Business things. Yeah, no, and wicked sticker. Vibophone.
vibophone. It's got the good vibe.
So what,
Answer the call.
what else does
it's
he have
destiny.
set up there? Like I know we could probably like overlay
good.
some footage
Very
of you
proud of you.
actually there. But like, is it a big studio, a little studio? What does he focus on?
It's
Like,
actually
paint us a
the-
picture.
It's attached to like Rain City, so it's got a whole bunch of
Oh, wow.
studios. But his is his own specific studio space with a vocal booth above. But he actually does all of his vocals in the room with him. That's his main.
Whereabouts is that?
It's kind of 5 minutes from Gastown.
Okay, cool.
It's on like Hastings area kind of.
Yeah, it's not far from there. I forget the name of the street. It's on my phone somewhere, but yeah, it's
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's a great studio. We only saw his studio, but you can tell there's a whole bunch in there. But it's pretty wicked,
That's very
wicked
cool.
setup. Yeah, no, Braden's a great guy. We met him way back in the day when he moved here from Nanaimo. We were in
He was going to Nimbus.
yeah, Nimbus.
The music school downtown when we were.
Is Nimbus still around?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's the biggest music school that I know of for BC because our friend Jeremy graduated from Kevin Williams Private School. and
Hot Soul.
Hot Soul, and he's one of the founders of Nimbus with Garth Richardson of like Rage Against the Machine producing fame.
Yeah.
And then a couple other just big hitters all from the local area. And this was just when the school opened up and our manager was going through the management program. And I think Braden was going through sound engineering program
I
at the
believe
time.
so.
So we met him for some recording sessions. He played saxophone, just super awesome dude.
That's awesome.
Great guy. Great
he-
engineer.
Yeah.
Is he upstairs in that building?
No, he's on the main floor, and then he's actually got a vocal booth upstairs that he doesn't use.
Oh, I kind of feel like I went there and bought gear off him one time.
I wonder.
You
Just looking
probably
at the
have.
map.
Just ridiculously handsome guy, long blonde hair.
Okay.
You know, that guy ridiculously good looking.
Really, really, really.
Really,
You
really
trust him more
really,
that way.
We were
Ridiculously-
kind of more looking for is he a kind-hearted person? But we
He's
can go
great.
for that.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
We
No,
can go
he's a
ahead
great
for
guy.
the good-looking guy.
Yeah, no, he's a great dude.
How much did he pay you for that endorsement?
Yeah, I was just thinking. yeah.
Nothing.
He's like, I hope I got that right because I wrote it all out.
Yeah,
What he asked me to
exactly.
say.
really, really, really good looking. Yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
that's-
hopefully we can get some footage of that up and in a little bit, and then we'll bring him over here for a little session.
for sure. Definitely gonna do a video going through the phone for sure.
That'll be awesome. What's your home setup look like, Tyler?
I got a Scarlett 18i20, but before that it was a Steinberg UR44. So it's like the UR44 is the interface between your mics, your guitars into the computer, and it just had the 44's got 4 ins, technically 6 ins, but it's got a lot of ins, and it's got 2 outs that would go to your main monitors just for listen back, and then you've actually got two that can go out to some other gear that you can play around with. But yeah, it's kind of basic. I use Logic and Cubase.
And you got screens going on. You gave me screen envy.
Yeah, I got a couple screens.
Why do you like having so many screens?
I like being able to, not have to minimize and look around so much. It's kind of nice. Like, especially for video editing. I love being able to have my timeline and then just kind of look up and see what the big picture
Yeah,
is.
I'm always amazed that, like, again, it's different because I remember, like, our studio setup that we had when we had our studio built. We would just use, I think it was like a 27-inch iMac, like as like the screen and everything, and that was fine for the time. But I remember always being a bit frustrated you couldn't see everything. And then for myself, being a videographer, content creator, as well as a photographer, everything I like to see things, and I've always had like multiple screens. And so even for video editing, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a 55-inch reference. So each one is different for color correction and referencing and stuff. But the thing is that once you have it set up, I find it hard, like if I'm editing on location or something like that, to just be like, where the heck is things?
Right?
Because you're so used to having it all visible at once. It definitely makes it a lot easier once you get used to it. But then I say that, and I've been with guys that have like recorded on laptops that are so freaking fast with how they do it, and they know where everything is.
Yeah.
Again, it's just getting to know your setup, your gear, and the way you can do it. So, because that was the thing for me, is that like you're talking about my setup, and it's very, very minimal right now, but I didn't want to have a setup that was also so confusing that when I had an idea, I'd be like,
One piece of advice I got was learn your gear. It doesn't matter
Yeah.
where you're starting, but whatever you have, you don't have to be like, but I need that next thing. If you're not using what you already
Yeah.
own to its full extent, you're selling yourself short because these tools that you have are just
Right.
there's so many levels to them. And I mean, it'd be great. Like, how long do you think you've had your setup, Tyler, in your house? Like 5, 6 years straight of slowly building and
It's been a build,
changing
yeah.
and building the room. Like, you can't do it all at once. You
No,
got to
no.
kind of start somewhere. And then
It doesn't take much to start. Like, it really doesn't take a lot of money to get started recording. Like, you can get, like, you don't even need an interface. You can actually do it on your phone. There's apps that you can do like a 4-track recorder and just, use your phone mic, right? And just to put sketch ideas down.
USB microphones too.
USB
Yeah.
microphones are super
that's true.
easy. But even if you want to have like something that's like sounds great, like for under $1,000, you can get like a pretty sweet little setup. Like,
So most
if you have a
people
computer.
to do like it's not just a hobby, they're leaning towards doing this like fairly like at least a serious hobby mode. What's their budget they should be looking at then?
Well, I help
Not
my,
counting your home computer, like you need a decent enough laptop or computer these days.
Well, so before we even get started in that, like, what would be the weak link out of the first home setup? And like, is the computer going to be one of the things that's the weak link?
It depends on the computer you already have.
Okay, so like, say you're in high school, you've got a hand-me-down Mac, right? That you're like, okay, it's not like, because I have like, let's say like even for me, like, so I have one of my Macs that I have is like a MacBook Pro. It's a 2015 or 16, like i7. Or anyways, so it's pretty powerful, I guess. Not to me, like for what I use it for. In fact, I just use it for email now. But would that be considered the weak link if you get to recording as far
It
as?
depends on how many tracks you're recording, right?
And
If you're only doing a couple tracks at a time and you only have a couple of microphones, which you wouldn't have any more than that if you're doing a basic recording setup, then your computer's not going to be a weak link there, because you're not. Once you overpower your recording system with too many tracks, then your computer's trying to do like 15 things at once because you have that many inputs.
Like you shouldn't try to do a full band live off the floor simultaneously all at once kind of idea versus like if you're a singer-songwriter.
Well, you could do that with one microphone to get a demo.
yeah.
For sure.
Like a room microphone?
Yeah,
Okay.
why not?
Not like 15 separate tracks, like really taxing an old computer.
Yeah. Well, that's jumping into the deep end though.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do recording audio. You can get away with a lot. It's more so when you get into like VST instruments and like software-based stuff that you can kind of.
So when you're imitating lots of like, oh, I want to have reverb on all my stuff, and I want to have these cool effects going in, and I want a live cello, and I want, my piano, and I want, 5 guitar layers.
Oh, here's another way to do it too. Like if you, rather than bogging down your computer by having multiple tracks recording at one time, you could go out and buy one of those. You guys have seen those iRig.
Oh yeah.
They have those iRig streams,
Yeah.
or they're like single inputs or stereo inputs or whatever. It's simple. You could get one of those, plug in your computer, and you could buy for a couple $100 or go rent for like, don't quote me on this, but like $10-20 a day or something like that. One of those Mackie mixers, and you could plug in a whole bunch of microphones, and you can do like a little soft mix on there, and you can record a whole band multi-mic, and then just mix it down. You have a stereo input.
Similar, I did a lot of
Actually,
live shows like that where
a good call.
you'd have the big Mackie and you have doing like a live band just kind of on the fly. So like those same principles of making it sound good as a pre-mix going in, and then you're just recording a simple left right in.
You don't have the options of changing the mix later.
No, you don't. You gotta nail it
You know
going
what?
in.
You can, you just while you're warming up and jamming out and stuff like that, you just kind of make sure that it sounds good, how you want it to sound through the mixer, and then just record that.
I do know that I had when I sometimes actually found a lot more enjoyment when I stripped down my setup. So
Yeah.
when I would take away things, and it was just because, again, like I said, like I wanted to be able to have it so that when inspiration would strike, and it always, for me, I've always had an issue with turning the music off in my head. Hence why I've always struggled sleeping. Because since I was a kid, I wake up in the night with music waking me up, and so people seem to think that that's an awesome thing, but when you go for a while without sleeping, it doesn't seem so awesome. But when the inspiration strikes, the last thing that I wanted was to be looking at a complicated setup, which a lot of times at our studio, our bass player, who's an engineer and he's phenomenal at it. It was so tricky to figure out the way that it was set up through all the different things that he had, and he had it set up for him. That I liked the idea of, well, if I wanted to throw down a guitar line and a vocal line, mainly it was always a melody that I wanted to throw down, and then I wanted to try some ambient guitar, then like a bit of lead guitar, and then I was like, well, maybe I wouldn't mind throwing some bass in there, and then maybe even just like sketching a little beat or something. It was so easy for me to do with the Scarlett, whatever I have, because you could just keep layering over top, and I never noticed a bog at all, but it allowed me to at least do a mix, and sounded great. Like I was always amazed for like cutting demos and ideas and just keeping them on the fly and not feeling like I was being held back. Also, it wasn't ever like, I'm a newbie when it comes to this kind of stuff, so to me it was like really straightforward. And then again, if I had any questions, we talked about this last time, I was always hopping on YouTube to try to figure out like
You can find anything on
what
there.
was going on. But yeah, I always found that it's always a shame when you've got it right in your head. You're like, this is going to be so awesome, I want to lay it down. And then you just can't figure out, like, why can't I even get a signal? Like,
Right?
that was the worst feeling in the world. Like, I'm like, what am I doing wrong? And I'm calling up the bass player. I'm like, what? He's like, you haven't even turned it on.
The
Yeah.
hardest parts when I was doing a wedding DJ would be like the ceremony is about to start and we're outside, we're in a weird field, and power was always an issue. And if I had like one on those big mixers we talked about, I had a pretty good one. And if one track was muted or soloed and you didn't realize it, and it's daytime and you can't see where the lights are flashing,
man.
and you're trying to get the shade on, and you're trying to see if your LEDs are popping up on your power bar, or is it the power bar? Have I plugged in all my cords? You're going through that like checklist in your head, and you're trying to like look really calm with everyone. Like, yeah, this show's about to start. Just a minute.
Yeah.
Last minute checks here. Everything's totally fine, and inside you're just like, keeping your composure is a really difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
But when you're kind of live. Like, you've probably been in situations like that, Ty, when you're, like, playing live with a band, like, different shows, different things, where, like, something's not right. The show must go on, but
Don't poop your pants. Don't poop your pants.
it's too late. Like, everyone just kind of has to make it work on the fly.
Yeah.
Well, I remember one time we were encouraged to like rehearse screw ups. So rehearse, like when you were
Something
talking
go
about
wrong.
like starting a song and the song was wrong, and you're like, oh shit. It's like some people actually just get really, really nervous and they're like, I'm just going to try to fight through it, instead of just stopping and being like, listen, man, you know what? Whoops. And like really ultimately, what's the worst case scenario is like everybody that already likes you already, who's already there,
Yeah.
because they're all your friends, are going to be like, oh, whatever, man. Like, don't worry about it. And I remember,
That was
you know,
deliberate.
we had like, I had the fear of like God like put in us, because we had, when we're on tour, we'd had other bands tell us, oh yeah, like we were on tour with this band, and before, you know, you do sound check everything, and this band that was headlining would think it'd be funny to go, and they would actually walk by all the amps and just go and zero all the
Oh,
amps.
no.
Because they thought it was funny for when it was your turn to go on as the opening act for them,
my.
that all your amps were back to zero, or they would do it to your pedals, which I'd
Brutal.
spent forever. So we learned like little tricks, like, so we would like work in like, well, what do you do in those situations, and how can you work through that? So you
Thinking
don't just
ahead, yeah.
panic and freak out, and little things. Like I remember, like playing a show once, and it was like totally fine to play like on a big stage with big lights, and I could see all my pedals and I could see all the LED lights. I knew exactly what was going on. And then the next day we went straight to playing an outdoor festival that was like crazy sun.
The sun's in
and
your
I couldn't
face.
see a thing.
You couldn't tell if something's on or not
No.
on. You're trying to get that little tiny bit of shade to be
Yeah.
like, well, this is on, so it must be this thing over here, and you're just kind of nodding your head and jamming.
And I didn't
it's
necessarily like I wasn't necessarily when I was playing like looking straight down. Actually, you just see it out of your peripheral. Like I knew like that it's like this foot's doing this one. This is controlling the volume. While this one's gonna be pressing this one. I'm playing here. I'm gonna be singing this way. And oh my goodness, look who's in the crowd. Like you know what I mean? There was so much going on in your head. And then when that was gone, it was like all I'm thinking about right now is like, is that on? And now I wasn't doing the performance that. So then it was
you
like
weren't
learning.
in the moment, which
No,
is like
so
to do like really authentic performance. You really have to be in that zone, that like emotional zen zone
Yeah.
that you can't live in. It's impossible to live in it. But
Yeah.
when you're trying to perform, like in my opinion, like properly, you have to be engaging and in that moment, and it's like you can't be distracted
Totally.
by.
well, I remember.
This
this go ahead.
this goes back to the point, like you were saying, having it stripped down and purpose built for. You were talking about this in terms of a studio setup. But you're saying stuff like that. Well, what if everything gets zeroed out? And what if some piece of gear or something in your chain or your setup or something screws up? It's like the whole pared down version of what you're doing is you gotta in a moment like that go back to like what is it you're really trying to achieve. Like if you can quickly dial in your guitar sound on your amp and then not worry about your pedals and like, hey, well, I'm 75% of the way there, and that'll be good enough for now. You can if you simplify the thing down to a certain point and you're okay with that, then you can at least get on with doing what you're doing. Same thing with recording. You know, if you're trying to do something too complicated, like if you're trying to record with compression or effects or something like that on top, and if that's not working out, just cut it out and get the good tone. Like simplify it down.
Get a
and
really good take, sounding good,
go with
dry.
what's easy to get and sounds good, and don't worry about the special effects on top of it. And you gotta, like you said, simplify it down. If you can make it work simple, everything else is just adding on top of that. But if you look at it as a whole, with everything all included all in one, you might lose it all because you're worried about all the little details about everything.
Because I think almost any song could or should be able to be broken down to be played with just a singer and a guitar or a singer and a piano. And when we were doing some vocal lessons, actually, we were going downtown with Tyler, and it was hard because she's like, oh, sing us a song. And we're like, well, Tyler's like, I can't really yell these parts on their own. And we were behind the piano like, oh, I'm just playing atmospheric and a chord, like, ding. And then Tyler's supposed to, like, sing the verse, and it's like, it's not the same with the big... It was a different style at the time, and really, he should have been thinking of, like, well, this song should be able to be sung acoustically.
Over anything, yeah.
Over anything. And it was like, no, it has to be performed with the loud, with the stuff. It's a screaming, there's emotion. It's like, well, then the song, to really, truly know it, if we got, like, stuck in a situation on stage and it was just dry and acoustic or whatever, like, you should be able to sing your songs.
Simplify it down.
It's not really. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. If you want
No.
But it's something that I don't think that we, like, more and more we're in a culture where it's like we have. It's all about being perfect, right? And it's all about having like the perfect show in all aspects. And it's like interesting because what I fell in love with, a lot of the artists that I fell in love with growing up were imperfect, and that's what made it perfect to me. And why I fell in love, like even now, like I was talking to somebody about Bob Dylan and how just like the storyteller, the artist, like the poet, like just who he was, like from what I know of him as a musician, just because I'm a fan. And I was just saying, like today, like first of all, I cannot stand any of those shows where they have people come on and they judge you on your singing and stuff like. I just think that's all bullshit because I always picture him and what our world would have missed out on.
Oh, he would have been out first round, man.
And that kills me. And it kills me to think that like people judge people like that. And so interestingly enough, him and his acoustic kicked ass in its unbelievably Bob Dylan-ish way, was phenomenal. And so that was one of the things that we learned was, okay, well, let's rehearse in that time. How can we eliminate these things if they ever do happen to us? Because those stories were true of bands being assholes on tour. So what we started to learn was, oh, that's why that band has these little blockers in front, like that plays outdoor festivals all the time, so they can see their pedals. brilliant. And then it was like, oh, that's why when they go on tour and they've rented all their gear, they have tape on every single thing that shows where all their things are. Because if it gets bumped, they know how to get it right back. And the guys in the band had each other's backs. Where, like, if I had my back, like, looking out for you, I could walk out, Tyler, it's supposed to be here. And I knew that. And then all our pedals were taped and marked out.
Smart.
Because we realized, learning from other people, that it was like, yeah, it's not just something that's talked about.
Intentional or not, things happen on the fly.
Yeah.
And you don't always have that, like, clear mind when the pressure's on and there's an audience at this show and there's this image thing and your ego and you're like,
Yeah.
but you got to have those rehearsals in place where you're like, okay, every time I come on, you kind of do your routine and you're like, this gets set to this gets set to that, and I'm ready to go. And I
Yeah.
find that's how I got really comfortable with DJing and stuff, where like my setup and even packing down, this chord went into this pocket, this chord went into that pocket, and I knew where stuff was. So when I'm set up in like a bit of a jumble and all of a sudden the call time was different, oh, the video team's here early, you got to be set up like now, and you're like, oh, I that wasn't the plan.
Totally.
But if you couldn't like change the plan on the fly and just kind of keep the show going on.
Well, and it's like, it's interesting because as a band, we had each other's backs. So if we were on tour, like, and I noticed that something was off the, I could walk over and I would talk to you and I'd be like, hey, like, and it's like, and if something's important and you're playing it, I can make the adjustment for you. Same thing for you, same thing for me, because I always knew that, like, as the singer, I could always just sing or this and that. And ultimately, I thought of, like, you know, we would try to talk things through, and it's like, if it's a solo artist, then there's all this pressure, like, well, now I'm a solo artist. When in reality, it's like we all know, like, looking at the person on stage by themselves, especially when you've done it, and I've done it by myself, that it's like, we just want you to be you. And so there's so much respect that I have for people that get on stage in the first place. It's such a vulnerable place to be, because we are shitting ourselves and worrying about stuff and like thinking about things. But like, when things do screw up as a solo artist, it's not the end of the world. And just saying, listen, I'm so sorry, I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but just give me 1 second to sort it out. Take a breath, calm down. It isn't the end of the world. Even if it was the largest act in the world, we'd still have like sympathy and empathy for them. And I think that too often it's like, we're now getting into this culture where all of our shows have to be pre-scripted, pre-planned, everything to the beat, everything with tracks.
That kind of reminds me of that like Instagram perfect photo life, where people get depressed because they look at everyone else's lives and they're like, oh wow, this person is just so exciting, their life is so perfect. When it's like, that's a curated, filtered, selected image they're portraying. So how do you find that balance when like you're trying to figure out who you are and you're comparing yourself to other people? So when you're like looking for other studios, Tyler, do you ever get like jealous of other people's stuff right now, or you just like, do you get inspired by them and be like, wow, that's actually a really cool idea, those guys are doing it really, really well, I wish I was, you know?
I say, like, when I was younger, I used to get more jealous, but now I get inspired, like, oh, I want to do that, or I want to figure that out, and it kind of helps push your barriers.
Yeah, I've come a long way in that. I used to be
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
Yeah,
I could do it better.
Yeah,
It's like, now it's like,
Maybe if I had equipment
those
like
guys
that.
are awesome. I want to be friends
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Honestly, what you guys are talking about right now is something that makes me so proud of the why we even started this podcast. Is like, to be able to say that, don't be asses like us, that we're
Yeah.
jealous and all, because it didn't get us anywhere.
No.
It didn't help our lives. It didn't make us better musicians or better human beings. But ultimately, like what you're saying now, like you've learned, it's like you can go in and appreciate someone's setup and learn from them, and then
Right.
and ultimately listen as well. Like, man, I just think of like all the experiences of going into so many different places with so many artists. And if I would have just, like, I always was quiet in the first place when I was around other artists, but I enjoyed listening to your history, your stories, like the things that you're, and that's why, like, when we first talked in the first podcast about, like, I wish that you guys would have approached us, because like
Yeah.
I was like, we were like, me especially, I can only speak for myself, was so desperate for like other musician friends, heck man, just other friends that like I could talk to, because I just felt very isolated as a musician, because it was this crazy competition.
Totally.
So then, yeah, I remember feeling jealousy, like of seeing somebody succeed and being like, oh man, now we're not going to have as many fans.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? What an
oh, I
odd
wanna do that.
mentality. It's like, it's so weird, but so I'm hoping that through this, people can see like that there's so many normal things, so many normal feelings, and then they can also understand that, like, I mean, ultimately, it'd be so amazing to create a community, an engaged community where we want the best for each other, that we
Yeah.
believe that we can, you know, if somebody's struggling with a DJ question, that they can ask Josh. Like, if someone's like, man, I'm not too sure about this, it's like, you know, do I go start swimming and race cars? They can talk to you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's why I'm here.
That's why I'm here.
But no, yeah,
well,
go ahead.
keep it up.
Yeah, well, I think it's great to. I love the idea of you know, working with other studios, other artists, other people on, you know, branching out ideas and like, you know, coming up with new things, right?
Yeah.
And getting inspired by other people and be like, hey, I like
Working
that.
remotely now more than ever. Like if we can do a cool part here, someone else has a cool part somewhere else.
Yeah.
Someone else takes those two parts, puts them together. It's kind of like
It's so cool.
all the breweries around here do collaborative brews for their beers, and it's so neat to be like someone started it here, they finished it there, they'll release it together, and now there's just a bigger tribe, a bigger family. I feel
Right.
like the music community could learn a lot from like the brewing community, where they're like, yeah, they're kind of in competition in a way with each other, but it's more like camaraderie. They're all in the same.
Well,
There's
situation
enough to
together. Yeah.
go around. There
If-
always
if-
is, and it's
if
like
the scene is more popular, it's like that phrase, the high tide raises all the boats together. Like if everyone's
Right.
super into a scene, it doesn't really matter if they're like, you shouldn't, that old mentality of like, there's only so many doorways to go through, and
Yeah.
I'm the gatekeeper, and if you want on the radio, there's one station, and I'm the guy you got to go through. Now it's like, the world is your oyster. Like everybody could be on Spotify.
And that's why
Yeah.
these this like basic recording setups and stuff like that are so good. Like, you know, you can do a little bit here, a little bit there. You can like it doesn't all have to be done in one place. You can collaborate if you have a simple setup with somebody. You can have your bass player play over there, and you could play it here, and it could all come together and get mixed somewhere else. There's
and it's like worldwide now. That's
Yeah.
the great thing. And it's interesting because I know that I was talking to somebody about collabing. Like, I have been writing songs since I was a little kid, and I always looked up to all these other artists and like wanted to work with them, but felt like it was like I just wasn't a part of their club. And how do I get invited into their club? And then I noticed that like even here, like when I was really like when we were going gung ho with the band, that there was these cliquey writing groups. And I remember always being like, oh, like kind of a bit like envious. Like, that's so cool that they have all these writing groups and wanting to be a part of it. But just for the sake of just being in the room with other guys, seeing how they did it, right? Like, and I realized that's something like let's just go back to beer. It's like, I think that's one of the cool things is like having the opportunity to collab together, especially when you do it with a pure heart where it's like, what is it? Like, there's like it's like, what's the word? Like reciprocity. Like, it's like
Yeah.
you're doing it.
Reciprocal and
Yeah, you're doing it out of just like the kindness, because like these guys are excited. It's something that they're really pumped about this, and it benefits everybody. But I
Totally.
know that like a lot of times that I did get like the reason why I didn't end up enjoying really diving into like the music community was because it was always like if I got invited to anything, it was what could they get out of me, versus like just strengthening the community and letting me even just be present with you to learn from you as well. Like, it was always like, okay, like we got to get something out of you. And I think that that's partly
But at what cost?
exactly. And so then I was nervous of that because I was young, like, and I was very impressionable. I was also looking up to people that were a little bit farther than me that was inviting me into these things. And I think that's part of it too, is just the excitement of being able to be in a community, whatever stage you're at, being able to, like you said, like worldwide now, you can do a part, you can ask somebody across the world, like, how did you do that?
And-
Like, and
Yeah, and there's so much you can do from your phone now.
Yeah.
Like that's one thing I wanted to kind of bring it back to, like as far as, recording. You remember how we were saying you needed a computer? You actually don't. Like if you've got a new iPhone or Samsung S20, you can actually get the adapter and one of those interfaces like the Steinberg UR22, plug that into your phone, and then you've got an actual interface you can plug a mic and a guitar into. You
Huh,
can live.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
you
that's
can
so cool, eh?
Record. It's called Cubasis 3. It's Cubase, but it's on the phone. There's lots of programs, but you can get that, record right in, like high quality, and then boom, edit in on your phone, export it out, send it, and share it. You can
that's
use
so
it to
cool.
live stream, because now live streaming is huge, right? Like, so they can have really high quality into their phone and then send that instead of using the speaker on your phone, which sounds okay, right? You can still totally do that, but get an interface. It costs you $200, and then boom, you've got pro quality if you've got a couple mics at home and stuff, and then plug.
You
your
could
guitar
even rent
straight
the
in.
mics over a weekend.
And then rent the mic, $7 for a day, or it's Long McQuaid's the best.
Brought to you
Anybody
by
else
Long
love-
and McQuaid.
Yes.
Unofficially,
I
Long
love
and McQuaid.
Long McQuaid. Everyone, you love Long McQuaid?
We have some friends there.
is that a swim club?
Yes. Longshore
Long
McQuaid.
McQuaid has been like awesome supporters of us for a very long time. Our bass player worked there, was a manager there. Like, honestly, that place has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
Through
I
our
love
entire career. Like when Conrad. I can't
I
praise the
know.
Conrad.
Everyone
It's just-
loves Conrad.
I was
Did he come
waiting
on the
for-
show?
I was waiting
All
for an
hail
opening.
Conrad.
Oh,
Can we bring Conrad on the
coming
show?
into the show.
I hope so.
He's coming down to the
well,
studio. sometime.
I was just gonna say,
on,
I'm
Conrad.
like, I want to give a special
Cheers-
shout
cheers
out
to
to
Conrad.
Cheers to
Conrad.
Conrad, and cheers to Long McQuaid,
Yes, thank you guys.
where the music begins. Literally.
Where are the yeah,
And our wallets
tell
get
them that.
emptied.
Where the music begins.
that is awesome.
Yep.
But yeah, you can rent anything from Long McQuaid. And
Everybody
what's
jumps
awesome,
on Conrad.
what's awesome, we love Conrad.
He's the
Okay, what's
best.
awesome about Long McQuaid is you can rent anything. You all know this, and it's not that expensive. And then what's even cooler is you can hang on to it, and then you
Like a
can find out
library.
how much to pay it off. Like what was it? We rented an Apex 460 mic for me to sing into for our album, and then by the end of the album, we had it for like a year and a half. And then I brought it back, and I'm like, how much is the monthly rental? They're like $30, and I'm like, how much just to buy it out? They're like, $28. And I was like, I would like to buy it, please. So it's like any rental fee, a percentage goes towards buying it. So like, just try stuff out.
It's one of those things that like I love that you've brought up technology, because I think that like you've got this opportunity that almost everybody has a phone. That phone provides them with photos, music. Like, I mean, obviously I'm just going to choose the things that like we're talking about, but like photos, music, video, those three things, okay, which are phenomenal. So I've had some of the coolest experience lately going on TikTok, and I'm on TikTok and I'm enjoying watching these artists that are going live and just performing, and they're talking and stuff. And I often think like I still get excited about, they're half my age, and I get so pumped to watch them because it makes me excited about music again, because they're just so giddy and so
Right.
they'll do things that they're embarrassed, and it feels so raw. And going back to what we were talking about earlier about really slugging it out in the clubs and trying so hard to get people there, it's like now that work is going in with things like live. So they're focusing on things like bringing in some cool lighting and stuff like that into their rooms, and like setting up, like there's some guys are actually taking like, there's the DJs on Reddit that I constantly, it's funny how my wife would be like, what are you up to? I'm like, 5,000 of us are watching some dude in his
bedroom,
room
he's-
spinning like freaking tracks, and he rules,
And
man.
he's killing it right now.
And I'm like, it's funny because when I have my girls too,
the
like,
live chat.
yeah, they'll say like, I'll be like, I think you're like, that was a really great song, and it possibly goes, oh thanks. I'm like, oh, it's me. He's talking to me. But like, the cool thing is like, so when was the last time you played a show for 5,000 people? When was the last time you could stop and nobody cared because you got a chance to actually talk in between and address people and talk with
Pretty
them,
cool.
not at them? And then the other cool thing is like, this guy that I was watching just the other night was playing, and then he'd screw up and he would laugh and goof around, and everybody loved it. So why did they love it? Because he was being himself, which was quirky,
And the
funny.
setting wasn't
it's
at a club
engaging.
where everyone had to be posing a
Exactly.
certain way and getting drunk in public a certain way. And
Yep.
that vibe of the live show, now that everyone's in their homes together, it's like that same, it's like cliche, but it's like they are
So-
all in this together.
Exactly. And so what I thought of was I was sitting there and I was like, I was really enjoying it because it was like just adorable to watch, because I was like, oh, this is totally my heart. It's like just being there in my living room, playing with my girls, like, and people just enjoying it for what it is. And I thought, can you imagine if this like is the next John Lennon?
Right?
And I'm
Yeah.
getting the chance to watch this guy with 3,000 viewers on TikTok as he's goofing around, responding to me, this and that. I'm like, I just felt very honored. And I actually was like, okay, I fucking love the fact that we have this tool in front of us that we can just set up and we can play into. And that's why I think it's so cool you're talking about even being able to record into this device. But this device now is providing musicians with a way to connect instantly at any time around the world to create a truly engaged community that enjoys them for not only what they do, but most importantly, it gives them an opportunity to show more of who they are. And in a
Totally.
day and age when video is just skyrocketing,
Video
and
is huge.
everybody should be putting out, like if you're a musician, a studio, a podcast, video is absolutely essential for your marketing. But the biggest thing, and the thing that I can't reiterate enough from a person who's a partner in a marketing agency, is be yourself. That's it. Don't be, it's interesting because years ago, like when I was doing a lot of like photography and stuff, people would ask like why I don't do portrait photography, and I can't stand doing portrait photography. I've never enjoyed it because when people, and I would do it for certain clients.
Fake smiles.
I would do it for certain clients because I adore them, and so I had no problems doing it for them. But like ultimately, I want to take a picture of how you truly are. But when people take a portrait, they want to take a photo of how they want to be portrayed. And I just, that's just not me. It's just not in me to do that. I want to capture that true, authentic smile, that body language that is saying so much more. I don't want to stage a fake photo. So when it comes to things like the opportunity for me to watch this guy on TikTok, and he's just like, you could tell he was a little bit embarrassed when he screwed up, but at the same time, he was like goofing and he laughed and he stopped and he had this hilarious laugh, and it was so cool for me.
That's awesome.
You were just saying how video is so important with music and everything right now.
Absolutely.
How come? Like, why does that, in
It's
your
more
own words, what is
engaging,
it? What is
you
it?
know? You put a
What
face
makes
to the
it
name.
so important that it wasn't so much? Actually, I don't think it wasn't before. But what's changed that has brought it up to the forefront?
Well, since marketing is a huge part of my life, I'm going to ask you guys that aren't into marketing, why is it important to you guys?
Well, I heard video killed the radio star. Is that true?
I think so.
This is the guy with one-liners.
Well, I'm just lazy. I'm lazy, so I like video because I just.
You don't. Earlier, quote from Tyler: if he has to read something or he has to listen to something, he's gonna listen to it
Yeah, I don't
first.
get time
He
for
doesn't-
that.
he's got other stuff to go on.
Yeah.
I want
He's
to
doing other things.
touch on that. Actually, you were saying you'd rather listen to it than read it. You know what? The last thing that I'll lean towards going to do would be just listening. If I'll listen, I love listening to stuff, but if I'm just like in a pinch trying to do something, or I want to read it quickly, or I want to watch an engaging video. Like I'd rather listen to a podcast that has video on it personally, but that's just me.
I feel the same way, but if it's writing, I would also like them to say it. You know, like if it's writing,
He's the
that's
only guy
cool.
to read a book at the same time the audiobook is playing.
I love the audio. I love audiobooks.
I can't
Yeah.
do
It's
it.
gotta be an English
I don't
accent,
do,
too.
I don't do audiobooks. I can't.
My
I
big
don't like
challenge
'em.
with the audiobooks, whether I like the narrator or not, is how he portrays or she portrays the opposite sex. Because sometimes they'll be going through it and they'll be like, and then he went around the glen and he found the fairy who was like, oh, hello, how are you today? And sometimes you can really buy it and you're like, wow, he's really nailing all the voices. And sometimes
Right?
you're like, this is really taking
Does
me out
it
of the
sound
zone.
like my wife imitating my voice? Like, oh yeah, I sound like a big dumb dope kind of guy. That's like,
That's another
Is that what
episode.
she does?
That's
Yeah.
That's real deep
Oh,
cut.
yeah.
there.
So just for clarity, Annie from the heart.
yeah.
How does
The heart.
how does she do?
She likes to make me sound like
We'll
this.
cut that part out. She's like,
Yeah, she thinks I'm real smart though.
yeah. Just leave in Annie from the heart. She thinks I'm real smart.
Sorry.
We'll just cut that.
She thinks I'm real
It's a
smart.
clean cut.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So there's like
Smuggler's Trail.
so going so video for you. Why is it
Oh,
why
just
is it
like,
important for you?
just to put the face to the name. Like if I'm like getting ready for work and I'm like ironing my work stuff, I'll put up my iPad and I'll throw on the videos and I'm still half watching them. I want to see the people. I want to see, even if it's mainly I'm just listening to it.
Yeah.
And no matter what the content is, if I'm whatever I'm looking up at the time, I want to see the person. It's just it's a lot more engaging for me. I like to put a face to a name, to a
Okay.
voice, to a sound.
Makes it
that
more real,
vibe.
right?
So
Yeah.
when you say engaging too,
I'll listen longer. I'll
yeah?
watch longer.
Are there any other words besides engaging that you would use? Because I want to.
Is that like too much of a buzzword?
No. Because I 100% agree with you with engagement. I'm trying to see if there's another word like.
And once it sounds, it's like it's authenticity. Like it's
Okay.
such a vague, like one of those big buzzword trouble words. Like, oh, you got to be an authentic, engaging person, and obviously it's so easy. It's like, but there's that. You can't say it till you see it. There's a level of charm or level
Yep.
of like that person is just being themselves. And I love the ones when you find that person who, like you said, they don't even have that many views or that many whatever.
Yeah.
But you're like, I feel honored to be like, wow, they really tried their best. And they're learning, and then I love finding a channel where you get hooked on a recent video and you kind of go back a bit and you see where they started, and you're
Yeah. See how.
Yeah. I
whoa,
love
this
that.
wasn't an overnight thing, but
Totally.
they've been slugging it out for those
Yeah.
20 people, and then something clicks. You said a big post on Reddit or who knows where, and it snowballs, and it's
Yeah.
like all these people will support you for being you because they can go back and be like, you were you the whole time.
Yeah.
This wasn't like oh, now I'm going to put on this character now that people are watching me. Those people aren't going to last long, or the audience isn't going to stay with them.
I feel special when they're like, and for the 3 people still listening to this, thank you very much. I'm like, oh,
I'm one of those 3 people.
Yeah.
Hour
So
20.
that's where like Dave, obviously, like I don't even have to answer you anymore, because those are phenomenal answers as to why the importance of video is there. As marketers around the world know more than ever that video is just absolutely essential as part of your marketing plan. You should be putting out video all the time, and there's reasons for it. So I am a photographer, a videographer, a content creator, a partner in marketing agency. I consult with people. I talk to people about their social strategies and their marketing strategies, and how I always go back to focusing on you being you. So the thing is that what you talked about, and that's why I was asking, because it's interesting, like at our agency, it's funny because like one of the partners, I always tell him, I'm so sorry because I've been preaching for years, transparency, authenticity, and empathy. And when you practice those three things, you win every time. And especially when I say it, I know that they get annoyed, and I know it's like keywords like engaging and authentic.
It's a weird, like a certain amount of times.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, yeah.
I know,
yeah,
and it's something that you hear all the
yada.
time. But there's a place for photo. There's a place for written copy. There's a place for this. So I'll use an analogy that, like, when I would write music, we've got a fly in here. When I would write music, it would be something that I would envision that I could feel in my soul. And I could feel what I was like, and we talked about this earlier, that the lyrics actually were getting in the way of what I was truly feeling. And so my wife, she actually would tell me, she's like, you ever listen to yourself? And I hadn't. I would just be singing gibberish. But I actually felt like I was getting out what I was trying to say. And so as I would be scraping the bottom of my soul, words were falling short. And chords were falling short. And the structure was falling short. And so I realized that actually my body language, the way that my eyes, which are the windows to your soul, we can fake smiles, but we know psychologically that actually what people consider crow's feet are actually smile lines. You can't fake a smile. So even now with masks, when I'm shooting, people will say things like, oh, you must hate people wearing, like, hate's a strong word. You must dislike having masks. And I'm like, actually, nothing's changed for me. I can tell a genuine smile from a non-genuine smile. That's why I just want to observe who they are as a human being. So going back to the song analogy, is that I knew then when I would perform that song that it was more than just the lyrics, it was more than just the catchy melody or the guitar or the drums or the bass or the synth or whatever had been put together. It was all of it. And then when you actually were able to be you freely, which was hard sometimes because you're nervous, but the more that you practice it, the more that those nerves went away, the more genuine you could come across. Hence why being in someone's living room when they're on TikTok and you got this like, this guy doesn't even care because he's like, oh shit, this isn't going the way I want. Click, and you can just end it right then and there.
Yeah, I'm out of here.
But what you're getting is, and this is something that I stress with so many businesses that I work with, and I would say the exact same thing to artists today, is you be you. So that's the number one thing, and why a lot of times there is a place for photo, there is a place for the copy, there is a place for video, and it's more than just it's the whole thing. And I think that's why, to me, like when we do engaging content with like clients with a photo, maybe there's some wording that we could add onto an engaging photo. And that's why also I loved being able to sit back as part of my role as a photographer, as a content creator, and I would just observe you guys, and I would observe, okay, when Tyler does this, that's a genuine body language. That's him being genuine. That's a real smile. That's your real smile. That's your real, like when you get emotional. So when I get that photo, I know I can match it with the copy that shares that true, authentic story. So when it comes to video, sometimes it helps because you're then able to get the body language, the awkwardness, the emotion, the nervousness, this, so you feel a little bit more sometimes. And that's why I think that video is just taking off, because we've just become so accustomed to putting up just any photo that's not even, we don't care. And then we're hoping that like, just whatever, and we throw it up. So it feels so refreshing to get a like the other day, I'm going to be brutally honest, I was out on location, and a lot of our clients always wanted, they're like, oh, we'd love to hear from you, like with a lot of the things. And so I had all the lighting stuff set up for like that I just finished shooting. So I thought, I'm just going to do a quick little video. So I started and I did the video, and there I am like, oh, that wasn't perfect. So like 15 takes later, I'm like, what is wrong? What is wrong with this? This is supposed to be like just a little 30-second video.
I'm trying to do behind the scenes authentic look.
Showing how to be authentic. And then I was like, oh, I'm such an, like, literally I was embarrassed.
Where's my filters?
So authentic.
I was embarrassed, and I was like, this is just absolute bullshit. So I decided to just like click record. And it got like, it just went off. And it was just me being me, because I realized I'm going to say, listen, I've tried 15 takes, and here I am telling you to be you. And I'm realizing I'm just hung up on trying to be cool and trying to be the best and trying to be perfect. And I think that's why you can actually do video or take video, and it can do just as much harm, because you can try to make it perfect. And people are like, no. And we've seen that when we're like, that's just so fake. But the stuff that connects is that authenticity, without, butchering those words, using them over and over, but that transparency, authenticity, and empathy win every time. And when it comes from a genuine place, I mean, it's phenomenal. And then we do get, because I'm the same thing. I can put something on or have in the background, like, oh my goodness, this is so awesome. And to see their body language and this. But then I can understand when I see a photo of that same artist, go, oh yeah, no, that's not real. Like they were posing for that. Going back to the original thing, why I said like I can't handle taking portraits, is because like I want to see the real person.
So you go through, I gotta ask, you go through these 15 takes of like with all the clients that you're doing, all these videos, how many terabytes do you go through, like on a weekly basis?
Yeah, if you're doing high
Like,
quality video,
I
you
go
must
through-
be just hard drive after hard drive after hard drive.
Yeah, I think I can honestly say it's probably about 5 terabytes a month.
that's a lot of space.
That's a good
Holy
amount.
Smokes.
That's a lot of terabytes.
How many hard drives do you have to accommodate for that?
Well, I usually cap out my hard drives at 5 terabytes because I usually do project by project, so I cap them out at that just because specifically I have, knock on wood, had very good luck with hard drives over the years. I have in storage lots of hard drives. Everything, I'm very OCD with the way that I label things, so things are labeled by date alphabetically. Anybody can go into any one of my hard drives and you would be able to know from 10 years ago, you would easily be able to access and figure out where things are. Everything is done structured ridiculously.
That's good.
But
it sucks to lose things.
yeah, but I have had a couple moments like where, say, like I did a project, like I used to do 1 hard drive per project, so it was just part of the project. So at the end of a project, that hard drive was specifically for that person, and then that was put away. And then I'd have somebody come 5-6 years later and say, listen, like, do you mind grabbing that content that you shot from us 5-6 years ago? We need it for something. And I remember twice I actually pulled out hard drives and they just wouldn't turn on. And I only used them for the one project and then put them in storage. And I never even touched them. So I've always been nervous of that instance. And then just recently with your joyful hard drive experiences where you were having issues and coming back and forth with me, I was like, literally 2 days later, I would filled up one of my hard drives. And I'm like, okay. So I turned around, grabbed the Lacey hard drive and or Lacey or whatever anybody calls them, plugged it in. I was like, that's odd. It's making a weird buzzing noise. Never had this happen before until you start telling me yours. And instantly I was like, oh, I don't trust it. And it wouldn't mount on this. I'm like, no, I'm done. Sent it back. I was like, I haven't. So knock on wood, that'll be the only one I'll have forever again. But yeah, no, I go through a lot. And I also back it up in multiple areas. That's the thing is that like video content when you're shooting 4K.
You'd use your
is
backup plans.
big.
It wasn't the same, but with DJing, you'd have your computer going, and then you needed to have your backup and your backup's backup, just in case like the show has to go on. You're mixing 2 songs, something goes wrong. You got to have that phone or that iPad or that iPod ready to go with a backup track with a pre-mixed maybe 10-15 minutes of a set you know you'd never touch normally, songs you haven't played yet. The crowd's gonna love it while you fix your problem in the meantime. So like,
What
you're
about
doing these big video projects, and what did you need to do to get your stuff back? Like you had to buy a new program.
Let's just say, what about when you go to back up the project and then the project's not there, and you're like, I just recorded this project, and now the hard drive's corrupted. So like,
Okay, wait, that's actually what just happened to you, right?
yeah. So that was one. So recently we filmed a jazz duo in here, and filmed the singer and the piano player, and the piano player's hard drive corrupted. So basically I went to go back them up for when I was ready to edit them, and the singers was there. Looked great. Backed that up, but then the piano player, the hard drive wouldn't mount, and it basically said when I loaded it in, it said, or when I plugged it in, it said, please format drive to use. And I was like, oh no, I formatted it to use it, and then I used it, and now it's supposed to have stuff on it. And so then I panicked, and then I got that feeling like I was going to crap my pants. And I was like, oh no.
So he hopped on the walkie-talkie.
So I hopped on the walkie-talkie,
Went for a swim.
listened to 40p a little.
Yeah.
And basically, I was just kind of like, Googling, how can I find this? Like, what could have happened? I tried, a different adapter, tried a different computer, and nothing would read it. So I'm like, oh no. I'm going to have to call these people and be like, hey, super sorry about this. And but I didn't give up. I was like, hey, there's got to be something. And I had deleted a project accidentally before and had to try to find that before. So I knew there was some sort of program where you can kind of
Data recovery.
And I know there's people who will do that, but it's very expensive, like thousands of dollars, right? So I was like, I don't really want to do that. So then I found a program called Disk Drill, and it'll let you use it for free, but then it's free to recover 500 megabytes, which nothing is that small.
500 meg.
Right?
That
was
I found
free.
the first 5 seconds.
But if you want to recover over 500 megabytes, it's $115. But very well spent because it scanned it once, and this is a 1 terabyte SSD. It found, like almost 800 gigs of stuff on there. But the funny thing is the first time it scanned it, it found all the footage from the previous format. It didn't find my footage I was looking for, so I was still not feeling very good about it. But I was like, well, if it found the stuff that I had formatted off the drive to record this, it's got to be on there somewhere. So I ran another scan. It found 800 gigs of stuff, but then it said it can still scan more, and it scanned the other partitions, and it went like all night, a couple nights pretty much, and then it found like 1.4 terabytes worth of stuff.
That I still have
I don't
no
get it either.
understanding how a 1 terabyte hard drive
Can find
1.4 terabytes.
I think it's because it sees parts that it can be like, we can rebuild him. You know what I mean? And
Yeah, I have no idea.
Yeah,
it's sorcery, man.
it's crazy. So luckily, I found like another folder of like rebuilt stuff. So I'm looking, and then finally I found them, and a whole bunch of them were like stuff I had recorded 2 formats ago, and I'm like, this is crazy. And then I finally found the 6 videos. It was like 300 gigs of 4K footage I was looking for, and I was so happy.
Did the quality change at all?
I don't think it did,
That's
but part of
really
me also
funny 'cause
feels
I
like
do
it
know
might
how-
have.
I do know how that works. It like data when it goes off into the ether, it like deletes every second pixel of the resolution
Yeah.
kind of thing. And then what it does when you do data recovery, like it'll delete more than that. So it'll delete like 3 out of every 4 like what do you call it? The zeros and ones, binary like code, and then when it'll draw it out to the size it's supposed to be, and then it intuitively fills in
Like
the
rebuilds
blanks,
it?
and it rebuilds it.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be the same quality then.
It's got to be.
But
it's
but
maybe it's
if
like
it- but
Monster
if it-
versus Rocketfish cables or something.
But
you
if
know,
it
like,
puts it in there
dare
because
you.
it's, ooh. I hear there's a thing here. No, but if it can smart draw it into the point where it actually brings the quality back to a level that's acceptable.
So I guess what we're
nothing
saying
I'm
is like
super happy with it regardless, because it was like my favorite footage I had taken yet, and I was just like so happy with it. And then when I saw it was there, and I've been editing with it now and like putting it together, I'm like,
so people at
yes.
home like back up your stuff.
Yeah. So no, first of
You
all,
have it on your laptop, you have it on your hard drive. Buy another hard drive and put some on there.
no, number one lesson: don't give up. Keep trying it. Disk drill. Download that program, and
It'll save you.
also, if you're selling a computer, triple format that hard drive, because people could still find your stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, I heard that like, no triple.
Like, it's
hard,
not
yeah.
gone. Your data is not safe.
It's not gone, and I know that, like in my case, like for using the hard drives, like it got to a place where I just couldn't back it up enough, right? Like we were paying like lots of amounts, and I remember talking to other videographers, other photographers. I was always kind of picking people's brains as to where they do their backups, how long, and in the end, when it boils down to it, there is so much content that I'm creating every single day. There is no way that I'm able to back all of it up to cloud stuff to this. Like, so it gets to a place where you just have to learn what works for you, what you trust. Like, clearly you are not going to trust that like hard drive ever again.
It's gone.
So get rid of it, get a new one. That's the other thing I've learned as well, is that like, even for me, like, and when we chat on the phone, when you're going through that issue, I was like, you got to get rid of it once it's gone, because you will never trust it
Never.
again. When I plugged that hard drive in, oddly enough, I knew that I was like, that buzz. And you know how you sometimes hear that tiny
Yep.
little, none of them make a noise, because my studio's quiet if I want it quiet. And I was like, that's really odd. And I was listening, and I knew right away something's not right. So go with your gut before you even use it. Here's the thing that I've learned: don't try to muck around with a bullshit little system where it's like, I'm just gonna try to format it and make it. You're gonna regret it. Take it back and get one that works properly, because you will regret it when you're having an issue where it's like you have to pay thousands. I know somebody who lost like their kids from like 0 to 3 pictures, and like they had to pay thousands to get them back. And it was like, really, I felt gutted because they didn't get them all back, and they're never getting them back. So that's why I have my stuff. I do have a lot of it, like say final stuff backed up everywhere. But it is one of those things that, like for me, I can't be backing up 5 terabytes.
How do you feel about RAID drives? Have you gotten into that whole side of things?
No.
Scary.
Just don't know about them, or
No, I do. I just don't like one of my things is about efficiency. So it's about being able to do things on the go in all places. Like I want my setup to be easy.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to have things so it's like quick, it's easy, and also too, I just want to be able to, if I'm never around and I need to ask like my wife to go down to the office or anybody in the office to get something, I want it to be really simple.
Simple.
That's
yeah.
why I have like, literally I figured out a system of like, I remember talking to a guy that like was like wrote code and did all this stuff, and he's like, literally your computer thinks in ones and zeros. So the more organized you can be on your end for folders and stuff, the more that it loves you. So just it'll like be more efficient. He's like, you got to think of like, and I'm gonna butcher this. So again, like this is embarrassing. But it's like, he's like, imagine you're over here and you're sending a guy this way to go pick out content and bring it back. Well, if you're literally just scattering it everywhere, it's clearly going to take longer to get it and bring it back. When you keep things organized, it's just a clear, easy thing for the code to find it. And now that's obviously the lamest way of like, but I remember like he explained
Keep
it to
that
me.
desktop.
Well,
clean.
it happens all the time with the VSTs. You open up a program and it's like whatever. Like we have so many thousands of things going on. It's like, please find me that folder, and you just get into the like. You start up your DAW and you're like, okay, click this. Okay, click this file. We can't find this database. Oh, click that file. And before you even get started, you've clicked like 5 boxes. You're loading this in there. You pull up the thing and you're like, and it's not going to work. And I'm sure Dave knows all about that.
It's search system drive.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this,
So that's where I have like
shoot,
to me.
I shouldn't have pressed that button. It's gonna take an
Yeah,
hour.
that's where like to me it is like in that hour it's all about efficiency as well. So for me it's about coming in, and if I do have a client, which I have all the time, say, listen, we need this, then I need to be able to get it or have somebody be able to access it and get it instantly. And so having things set up in an organizational form is not just for my own benefit, which I know that there's like my whole life I've had a level of OCD where, you know, whether you're even right here, it's interesting because if I was to do this, I'd have to step over the lines because you don't step over on the lava. And
break
but
them
it is
off
one of those
back.
things that to me, like I have it organized so that it is something that when I get in, it's just very, very simple, very clean. And that's also because, well, so on your desktop, do you have stuff on it or nothing?
Nothing. My desktop's clean. Annie's desktop is just like.
Sorry, is that Annie from the Heart?
Annie from
I
the heart.
can't
Yeah,
remember.
Annie from the heart.
Annie from the heart thinks you're smart.
It rhymes, so it's got to be true.
That's my biggest thing. I'm just like, keep that desktop clean, or at least make a desktop shit folder and put that somewhere.
My dad has like
yeah, I do that.
the his tabs just on the Internet Explorer is nothing but tabs.
It
like, tab,
eats up
tab,
so
tab,
much
tab,
RAM,
tab, tab,
too,
tab,
like-
and then
Oh, I
your computer gets
can't do that
slow.
one.
And they're like, your parents always think you're better with computers than them. And it's like, no, you're just treating it like a ridiculous. Like you'd never have that many pages of a thing in front of you on
How
your
many
desk.
things do
Like,
you think of?
My wife's mom, hundreds and hundreds of tabs per window, and she has like 30 windows open at any given moment. And she's like, oh yeah, just go on my computer, and you try to open a tab, and it's like
click.
the computer sounds like a car with no oil in it.
You're like, I'm just gonna
I'm
make
like,
it.
never mind.
Yeah, I'm gonna make some tea and I'll come back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's you can't. Yeah.
But
Yep.
you had to go to your parents' house because they have a printer. Because do any of you guys own a printer?
I do.
I don't.
Oh, I have one now.
Okay,
But it's
okay.
black.
Okay, even beyond that, does any of you guys have a CD player?
No. Well, I have broken ones.
I've
I
got like
have
a
a
little
PlayStation
boombox thing I
4.
used to bring out to the
Are we talking-
drive-in theater.
Are we talking CD-ROMs for
No,
the
I don't.
computer? Or are we talking like
No,
CD?
I
Not
don't.
anymore.
I don't even have a CD player.
I got a CD player.
Do you have
Let's go,
does
like,
anyone have a
boombox.
VHS?
I have a VHS, but
No.
it's specifically to go through old tapes. But
And we
yeah.
found a bunch of old mini disc tapes. that
Oh,
we,
yeah.
We need to find an adapter because it's all of our old high school, early
videos.
band. We don't really know what's on it, but
We're
we know it's
Comtech
probably
geeks.
gold. So we need to find one of those adapters. Like it's not like they're like mini.
Half of it's
DVD.
probably literally us listening to Funky Town, staring at the camera, trying not to laugh because we
Yeah.
thought that was funny.
That was our first skit we ever
We're like,
recorded.
Let's look at the camera listening to Funky Town because it's so funny. It
With a
just-
straight
And,
face.
and you know what's funny is that data never gets lost.
No,
No, it's on the tape forever. Like
Uh,
we got to be careful with, like, you know, it's a private watching session. Some of
It's
the stuff
a-
we're not going to live
it's-
stream this because
no,
that's, you know,
definitely not.
or maybe we should. Let's
I
just
want
dive
to.
in.
I want to kind of bring it around, kind of like for our final topic of the cast here, for basically like Instagram tips and how important Instagram is for businesses, for musicians. Like I know for me, I was resistant to it for a while because like as I get older, I'm like, oh, that's popular. I don't like it, right? And
3 months later, guys, you gotta get on Instagram.
You gotta get on
it's so
Instagram.
fun.
And I started, you know, when I was doing like some acoustic duo stuff, I'm like, oh, it's kind of nice to put your performance videos and, you know, get out there. And then once started doing the Pineapple stuff, I was like, okay, now I'm full gung ho. And I've been working on getting Josh to start one. so he can help contribute, and I could tag you and stuff.
Did you guys
'Cause
see
it's
that bus go by that Tyler just threw me under?
Yeah.
It's a lot of
I don't know why some people don't join Instagram.
Just felt like,
You guys see that? Or is
But
this me?
it's actually like super beneficial. I know for like Annie from the Heart, her
she's my best friend.
yeah, she's killing it on there, and like 16,000 followers, and that's where a lot of her business comes from. And I know for most bands, like, you can get discovered by people. Like I've found so many artists on Instagram where I'm just blown away by how good they are, and it's just them playing on there, or like I've got a beat playing and they rap over top of it, or they sing over top of it, or it's them playing, or it's them live streaming, right? Like there's that one artist, Ashley Paters, who does all of her live streams, and like the quality and just like the connection is just great. Like how these people can reach out and just actually connect with their fans, and
Instagram's so much easier to find people you haven't connected with yet. It's so much easier to do that. Facebook is kind of your circle, and people have to be following you. They have to be in your friends or friends of friends or stuff like that. Instagram, you can just put stuff out there, and if you have all the right tags and go to the right places, people who have the similar interests, they might stumble across you.
But that being said, now,
But how do you target that and
and not get lost?
Do it efficiently.
How do you not get lost in the wash?
How do you not get lost?
Right.
Well, the thing is that I mean, what's something that every artist, every business like the Heart, like search and rescue marketing agency, like what's something that we're all looking for? Like why we're all looking for people to discover us, right? Like as an artist, you have something that you want to share with the world. As a business owner, you have something that you want to share with the world. As a poet, you have something that you want to share with the world. As a person that owns a company that makes curry, you have something that you want to share with the world. So there's a common theme that you have something, and that's why, going back to what we were talking about earlier about being yourself, when you get to be you, people get a chance to really get a sense for who you are. One of the things that's awesome is that you have all these social media channels that are available to you for free, and each person's community will talk differently on each. So like Annie, she's phenomenal, and she is herself. You would know best. So she is herself online. Yeah. And like that's the great thing is that so we know that she has like great product. But what it is that she is a genuine, transparent, authentic, and empathetic person. And so she knows her target audience, she knows her community, and she speaks with them. She doesn't speak at them, she speaks with them. So one thing that I've always appreciated about Annie, even back to a year ago when we were doing lives and she was joining in, was she's a lifelong learner. She's open to sharing the good, the bad, the ugly. And again, when you do that, when you lead with empathy, you break down walls. And what it does is, even psychologically, we know that one of the easiest ways to get to know somebody is to lead with shedding your layers. And so when she does that online, whether through Reels, which right now Reels are massive, everybody should be doing Reels.
What are Reels?
Reels are just another avenue of being able. Well, Instagram's trying to kind of take over the TikTok aspect of social media, so it's Instagram's version of TikTok. But
how long are they?
It's an Instagram Vine.
15 seconds.
Yeah.
Essentially.
You can have them like when you start off, you kind of want to go shorter, just to kind of ease into it. But anyways, one of the things is that we're all looking for a community to engage with us and us engage with them. So that's the key that I'm sharing with you there, is that it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. It's about an actual community that engages with you. So numbers don't necessarily mean that you've got a great community. I would rather have 100 truly engaged people that follow my business than 20,000 that honestly most were paid for and they don't engage whatsoever.
Totally.
The thing is that Annie's community on Instagram is going to communicate differently, also depending upon age group, right? You can't talk to a 65-year-old the same way that you would a 19-year-old or even possibly a 40-year-old. So what you do is you don't want to, when we make people burn too many brain calories trying to figure out what we're saying, what we do, who we are, people are just like, I'll just move on to the next one. We just know that's fact. Don't make us burn too many brain calories. So when you have an opportunity to be in front of somebody and to be yourself, which I was trying to be myself and realized that my insecurities got in the way when I was doing my video that ended up being 15. And then on the 16th, I just shed it all and said, screw it, which ended up being the one that everybody liked, which I should have just led with that, which Annie's very good at, is leading with that one. And she let me know. And I appreciated hearing that because I was like, yeah, like it's just this, she's good at it. So it's like a pat on the back from somebody who's good at it. Just be yourself.
Totally.
And
And that
so-
doesn't happen just right away. That takes time.
It
of,
does.
Like, letting yourself let go, right?
Yeah, and letting go of just like the preconceived things of like, well, I want people to perceive me as like I'm a business owner, that I'm awesome, that I've got my shit together, that whatever my business is, it's like it's the coolest, and it's like nobody's cooler. And then that jealousy we talked about with bands, it's like, oh, there's another kind of competitor. It's like I'm cooler
your
than
little
them.
ego kicks in
Yeah.
and everything's like.
So she does a great job, and I'm going to use her because like she does a phenomenal job, and I'm super proud of her for the way that she has engaged that community. Now, the interesting thing is that if she was to talk that way on Facebook, it may not work.
It's
So
funny, yeah.
Facebook is you need to speak to them in their language the same way you speak in a different language on TikTok and on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and like it's just going to go and go and go. And we know that people that are really dialed into their target audience, into their community, they're great at like this, and that's listening. My wife is a phenomenal listener, and she's taught me to listen, and that's what's made us so successful in Search and Rescue Marketing Agency and the photography business with Sarah Borg Photography, is that I have literally tried to emulate her. And so my wife is good at listening to not just what you're saying, but your body language, to even what you aren't saying.
What's that?
Yeah.
Almost at 2 hours.
was
listening to the silence. And I've actually been doing like listening psychologists speak on that because it really intrigues me. And Annie is good at that as well, is listening to that community. And then when you speak with them, because now you're not guessing and hoping, am I actually talking to my community? You're
They're
talking with your
engaging back,
community.
and it's
Exactly. So now when you actually then look at, let's say we do it with an artist, the importance of why being on social media. So not just Instagram, because certain people don't enjoy Instagram. Some people literally just stream live on Reddit. That's their avenue. Reddit is where they go. And I love Reddit for that they've created that community. And the thing is, it's knowing where your community is. And so Annie's got her big community on Instagram. She knows how to speak with them, not at them, not over them, because nobody likes to be spoken at. So what she does is, you'll notice that some of her posts, one post might come out and speaking to a specific group in her audience. And then the next one's here. And then she'll use stories to go talk to these ones, and then reels to talk over here. So what she's doing is, the number one common theme, though, is she's being herself, which
Yeah,
is the
that's the main
greatest
thing.
thing that you could be. If she was to hire me, all I would say is, like, just keep doing what you're doing. Like, and that's the phenomenal thing. There's things that we could tweak to grow and expand, obviously. But the great thing then is that, like, now you look at, like, the expansion going back even to, like, a band, having a manager come in and saying, listen, I can totally manage you. I'm going to be the 5th member or the 4th member of your band. And you're
I
like,
hear that every time.
oh, whoa, like, wait a minute. Now you represent us, and now you're our voice. Like, do I even trust you?
Right.
And that's that same thing with expansion with the business. It's like the brand that Annie has built, the brand that any business is struggling to, like, they want so desperately. Nobody cares about your logo. Nobody cares about your font that you chose, that you spent 8 days with a marketing team figuring out your font color, or the font, or this or that. What they want to know is, like, can I trust this brand?
Yeah.
Trust is essential. Absolutely. And it's like, so when now you've expanded, or you brought on that manager, and it's like, okay, these guys are awesome. And then they meet the manager, and they're like, this guy's an asshole. That's the brand.
That's the experience
That's-
they get. You can't do business with that
No.
that band. You might love the band, but
good
if
point.
even any person that comes across as, that unworkable person, how are you going to meet new people and forge like good
We got to
relationships?
do a wrap up and a intro.
Yeah, so I think like the main takeaway would be, get out there, be yourself.
Be yourself.
Make
Don't be afraid to
videos.
make those mistakes
Yeah.
and learning experiences.
Yeah, don't be afraid to get kind of goofy with it and try new things. And
Ask people. Ask for help
Yeah.
like crazy. Go out there and, like, listen.
Collab with someone who might
Yeah.
be in a different pool than you. Maybe they're doing
Yeah.
a little better. Maybe they're just getting started.
Yeah.
But that like rung up to bring the next guy up, and hopefully the people above you are going to bring everyone up to that next level.
and that's the same thing we're doing, right? Like
Back to popping
guys have any
everybody else up,
questions?
making the community.
right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and if you guys have any questions for us, that's what we're here for. Like if we don't know it, we'll find out. Like we'll look into it. We're here to research.
We'll bring someone on to school us
Yeah,
on
we'll
some
find
topics
someone. Sure.
that
We're here
we've
to
been
learn.
misinformed about. We've been- yeah.
It's so cool for me to be able to even learn and experience things and to know. And I know that starting off, like, obviously, like, when you get into things, I mean, social media has given us an opportunity to create communities that are worldwide and to have them at our fingertips and to be able to engage with people and to ask people and to, you know, even sometimes I wish that I would have been a bit more brave to just like reach out to people, because there was even a little bit of a safety being able to just use my phone,
Right.
not seeing somebody face to face, like, how did you actually get that sound on your guitar? Or
Right.
how did you do that? Or when you made that video, and that's the one thing that I absolutely love about social like communities is people forget the word social. So when they're like, oh, I love social media, it's like, well, you love media, but I wouldn't say that you love the social aspect
Yeah,
of it.
you love the
And I
media.
think that like that's the thing, is that somebody who finds success, and again, success is going to look different to all of us, and we have to consider what that might be to us, but somebody that finds success is a great listener, a great communicator, and they do it with transparency, authenticity, and empathy.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I think
Cut
that's
the
kinda-
intro.
I'd say that's the main takeaway from this is get out
Yeah.
there, be yourself,
Yeah.
try new things,
And
Welcome to the Pineapple Podcast.
never give up, never surrender.
never give up,
Yeah.
never surrender.
All right, well,
We'll catch you
He
next
just
time.
keeps going and replaying all these taglines. I'm like, all right, what else do I have?
If it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander.
Music.